Hey, everyone! If you enjoy my quantum audiobooks, you can support me by becoming a Patreon member. Your support helps me keep creating, and you'll get exclusive perks. You can also access my audiobooks directly through Google Drive. Check out the link in the description. Now, let's get started.
All these situations made Jiang Ming clearly know that he might not be able to beat Zhang Tian. He didn't say too much about the following words, but Jiang Ming and he and the others were definitely not fools. Since they knew that the employer had obviously used some method to deliberately hide the news of Flash Magikarp, no one knew about it. They also thought so. With the combined efforts of several people, these Beedrills were not a match for Zhang Tian and others at all. But in a short period of time, these Beedrills quickly began to retreat because of the attacks of Zhang Tian and other trainers. While Zhang Tian was chasing here, Jiang Ming saw a small wooden house in the forest. However, this headache did not last long. After all, since he dared to grab the Flash Magikarp in front of so many people, he knew clearly that his life would not be peaceful for a while. The future evolution will be the world-famous Red Flash Gyarados. It's normal, no matter who it is. Since he might not be able to beat him and there were more enemies behind, Jiang Ming couldn't let Salison let him. Gardevoir has consumed a lot of energy, so of course he can only run away. Jiang Ming ran very fast, dragging a group of Pokémon with him, and he didn't even bother to look at Zhang Tian. Knowing clearly that Flash Magikarp had already appeared in the Dongting Lake's secret realm, Jiang Ming laughed and then quickly turned around and ran. Since it is just an expectation, it proves that the other party may not know whether there is such a thing in this high-level secret realm. Then why can the employer behind Zhang Mo clearly feel that there is a Flash Magikarp in the Dongting Lake secret realm? Jiang Ming, who was confused, stared at Zhang Tian closely. Zhang Tian was stared at by Jiang Ming for a moment and then laughed. "Although you look young, you are really sensitive." After saying this, his eyes turned cold and he looked at the Poké-balls on Jiang Ming and spoke helplessly. "My employer entered the Dongting Lake secret realm once and met Flash Magikarp here. At that time, the location of Flash Magikarp was relatively remote. It's just that they didn't dare to make random comments until Zhang Tian spoke." The trainers who followed Zhang Tian looked at each other, obviously understanding Zhang Tian's attitude, and nodded to Zhang Tian without hesitation. Taking this opportunity, Zhang Tian didn't want to waste time anymore and began to quickly lead other trainers to cross the lake and chase in the direction of Jiang Ming. He pulled the corners of his mouth and gritted his teeth at the brothers around him with a speechless face. "It seems that we can't use other means to attack that kid in the future. That kid won't take soft or hard tactics, so we can only attack by force." Although Jiang Ming did hear others talking about Flash Magikarp before entering the Dongting Lake secret realm, the other party only hoped to get a Flash Magikarp here, but never said that there was one here. They will think about whether they can subdue it. Since he already knew that life was not peaceful, why worry about it? The synonym of rare and powerful, this is a man-made wooden house and the decoration inside the wooden house is very warm and ordinary. Jiang Ming, who realized that he might be chased by him, looked at the Flash Magikarp in his hand and felt a little headache. Now Zhang Tian said so. In addition, as a mercenary, if the other party didn't have enough ability, he would not be qualified to receive the mission and go to the advanced secret realm. Zhang Tian, who was sure that they had no problem, stopped talking nonsense, turned his head and looked at the Beedrill who was still planning to attack them. His eyes suddenly turned cold and he quickly took out his Poké ball. They naturally agreed at the first time. Zhang Tian, who originally wanted to scare Jiang Ming and call him a brother, took this opportunity to get the Flash Magikarp from Jiang Ming, widened his eyes and said, "I really didn't expect that Jiang Ming was even more insidious than him at such a young age." After seeing Flash Magikarp, and they had thought so a long time ago, this means that no matter what, he will chase Jiang Ming until he completes his mission. Jiang Ming actually didn't know how strong the trainer on the opposite side was because Zhang Tian only sent out a Butterfree and didn't take out other Pokémon. Jiang Ming, who was not worried about it at all, quickly put away his emotions and said coldly to Zhang Tian in front of him, "It depends on your ability, but I am very curious about one thing. When the Dongting Lake secret realm was opened, I didn't hear about the Flash Carp King." Jiang Ming walked around the wooden house and clearly felt that the owner of the wooden house should like it very much. But this is the secret land of Dongting Lake. Jiang Ming has never heard that there are people living in the secret land of Dongting Lake. It is really a bit strange that a man-made wooden house appeared in a secret land where no one lives, and it was decorated with great care. The wooden house may have been built by a powerful trainer in the past, or it may be for other reasons, if it was left by a trainer, but what information could be left in it? As he said this, he excitedly directed Butterfree to start waving the powder vigorously and blowing a weak wind. Jiang Ming, who was standing below, looked up at the two Pokémon soaring in the sky who were pulling the distance left and right. He smiled and spoke directly to Talonflame. Seeing that Jiang Ming was going to use the same trick again, Zhang Tian said to Jiang Ming proudly, "There is no place here for you to hide from these powders. This time I want to see how you can escape." Of course, Jiang Ming is just making an analogy. Butterfree's response speed was very fast, which should have been specially trained by Zhang Tian. Jiang Ming took a group of Pokémon to walk around in this wooden house that was really a bit strange. Butterfree seemed very dissatisfied with Jiang Ming's escape. The close-range ember spray made Butterfree no longer able to respond. It froze for a while in the range of ember and finally landed slowly. If he provokes another problem before the problem is solved, he may not be able to solve it completely, with this curiosity. By the time Zhang Tian reacted and wanted to put Butterfree back into the Pokéball ball, Talonflame's quick attack had already approached Butterfree, and just as Jiang Ming said, it pecked Butterfree directly. The powder fell in soaring in the sky, and Jiang Ming quickly dragged Gardevoir to retreat. In any case, it is really surprising that this wooden house appeared here. Although he did not feel threatened, he did not plan to stay here. Zhang Tian's Butterfree also appeared with him. As long as Jiang Ming can grasp Talonflame's skills properly, Talonflame can completely attack Butterfree above its level. Talonflame and Batty are both flying Pokémon. In the air, Talonflame is a totem level, ember sprayed directly at Butterfree. After all, there are still many troubles behind him. Obviously, Butterfree didn't expect Jiang Ming to throw Talonflame this time, so he had to stop slapping powder and start dealing with Talonflame's ember. For example, where is there any news about the attribute's secret treasure? However, considering the brief confrontation just now, he also knew that Jiang Ming was not a weak trainer, so although his face turned green, he didn't say anything but just calmly put Butterfree away. "Use quick attack to peck it for me." But many of Butterfree's skills are not as good as Talonflame. Butterfree, who was particularly frustrated by the burn, wanted to distance herself, but Talonflame had more skills than this one. After pecking Butterfree, Fierce Arrow 5.9 Eagle did not hesitate to spray Ember at Butterfree again. Unfortunately, Jiang Ming had already guessed its responsibility, so the Pokémon in the Pokéball ball Jiang Ming threw this time was Talonflame. Seeing that Jiang Ming appeared in front of him safely, Butterfree, who was not very satisfied with Jiang Ming, immediately flew towards Jiang Ming. When seeing Jiang Ming throw the Pokéball ball, Butterfree had already reacted and quickly took off, intending to distance itself from Jiang Ming. The highly aggressive Talonflame did not need to keep a long distance from Butterfree. As soon as Jiang Ming threw it out, Talonflame directly sprayed Ember at Butterfree. Jiang Ming's idea was not wrong. Under Jiang Ming's plan and command, Talonflame quickly used quick attack to rush towards Butterfree. Zhang Tian looked at his Pokémon being defeated by Jiang Ming's Pokémon in such a frillish way, and his face turned green. While he was giving the command, Jiang Ming suddenly threw a Pokéball ball behind Butterfree. From the level of the two Pokémon, Butterfree's level is actually much higher than Talonflame. However, just as he left the wooden house with a group of Pokémon and continued to run forward, Zhang Tian appeared in front of Jiang Ming at this time. In order to avoid his life being affected, Jiang Ming, who might not be able to solve the problem completely, could only retreat quickly, and then plan to go to the next 10 places with a group of refined Pokémon. Just as Jiang Ming was staring at Zhang Tian retreating with his Pokémon and planning to give Zhang Tian a fatal blow, Zhang Tian, who had been silent all the time, suddenly threw a Pokéball ball. In order to avoid the attack of Ekans in front, the two Pokémon attacked and dodged at the same time, and their physical strength bars were getting lower and lower. Talonflame sent out a growl, and the flames began to cover his body and rushed towards Ekans. This kid is quite insidious. Probably because Butterfree was solved by Jiang Ming, the people behind Zhang Tian were very unhappy with Jiang Ming's attitude, but they didn't dare to show up. Jiang Ming's eyes turned cold without any hesitation, and then he shouted to Talonflame, who had not returned to the Poké Ball, "Use Charged Flame." After the physical strength was recovered, they left the Dongting Lake's secret realm directly. Although he was a little speechless about Zhang Tian's insidiousness and didn't expect Zhang Tian to do this, Jiang Ming still reacted quickly after complaining in his heart. Taking advantage of the gap when Lai Neng Wying rushed towards Ekans, Jiang Ming quickly threw Ralts out. They were just helping Zhang Tian behind him. Now that he saw that Zhang Tian was no longer going to hide, he naturally didn't intend to be polite. Jiang Ming, who clearly realized that the other party was just helping Zhang Tian, immediately focused all his attention on Zhang Tian. After all, this secret realm was not safe enough for him, and he got a flash Magikarp here, which was considered a return on investment. Jiang Ming, who originally just wanted to test their attitude, instantly understood that this group of people was not as strong as Zhang Tian. This person was his biggest enemy. An Ekans quickly jumped out of Zhang Tian's Poké Ball, and then Jiang Ming heard Zhang Tian gnashing his teeth and saying, "Ekans, use Poison Barb to attack me." But it could definitely consume the physical strength of these two Pokémon. The Ekans under command was very obedient. In Zhang Tian's words, Ekans sprayed poison while using Poison Barb attack. As he said, he spoke again to Ekans, who was still attacking in front, "Use Poison Barb to attack. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first." Standing behind the two Pokémon, Jiang Ming looked at the Pokémon entangled with each other. He knew clearly that Zhang Tian also knew the strength of his side, so he had no intention of launching a strong attack on him but planned to use this roundabout method to consume his strength. Jiang Ming's eyelids jumped. He really didn't expect Zhang Tian to suddenly attack when he was slow. Looking at Zhang Tian, who looked ugly but didn't do anything else, Jiang Ming thought that he would never leave so easily, but he didn't intend to reveal it but said that he was leaving. This attack could not really successfully attack the fast and very flexible Talonflame, let alone the Ralts that needed long-range attacks. The thrown Ralts was still dizzy. Jiang Ming quickly directed Ralts to go towards Ekans. Use Hypnosis on Ekans. Thinking of the consequences of his physical strength and other aspects being consumed, Jiang Ming clenched his fists and began to plan to find a safe place to recover his physical strength. Yotilda. He was alone, but there were several people behind Zhang Tian. If his side all the Pokémon were consumed, then he would not be able to attack Zhang Moa in the future. The dizzy Ralts rushed forward without hesitation. Standing not far away and watching Jiang Ming's action, Zhang Tian smiled proudly. "I still have more Pokémon in my hand. How long can I consume these two Pokémon of yours?" He didn't intend to leave just now, but intended to test Zhang Tian and counterattack Zhang Qing. Fortunately, Ralts reacted very quickly. Just as Ekans attacked Talonflame, Ralts quickly blocked in front of Talonflame and launched Hypnosis at Ekans. Just as Jiang Ming was thinking, Talonflame in front of him suddenly sent out a growl and then slowly fell to the ground. But because Ralts' hypnosis just now took effect, this hypnosis made Ekans dizzy, and Ekans's thinking was definitely not clear in this kind of Kuni contest condition, so using confusion to interfere was different. Zhang Tian seemed to have guessed that Jiang Ming had the ability to defeat his Pokémon, so even when he saw Zai Tingting's Ekans falling to the ground, Zhang Tian was not panicked. Jiang Ming also knows that he can wait, but he also knows that he can't wait, so looking at Zhang Tian's relatively stable and intending to take out another Poké Ball's attitude, Jiang Ming didn't say anything, just stared at Ralts. Although only Zhang Tian has caught up with Jiang Ming now, the other trainers are not fools. As long as they are given more time, Jiang Ming's enemies will increase one by one. Jiang Ming, who thought that the success rate was likely to increase sharply, stared at the front and gave orders to Ralts. Ekans, who had already been almost exhausted, soon turned around in a daze under Ralts' hypnosis attack. He took out the Poké Ball, put away Ekans, and looked at Jiang Ming proudly. "I have plenty of Pokémon to fight with you, but I'm afraid you don't have the time and energy to fight with me." Ice. There were quite a lot of trainers at the lake at that time. After seeing Jiang Ming actually took the Flash Magikarp, those trainers naturally would not let Jiang Ming go easily. For this huge benefit, countless trainers all chased him out. But how to bypass these people and leave the secret realm of Dongting Lake is a bigger problem. Confusion, which originally had a success rate of only half, is likely to increase its success rate sharply due to the bonus of hypnosis this time. Zhang Tian, who does not have the ability to launch a fatal attack on Jiang Ming, decides to use roundabout means and wait until Jiang Ming can't drag it out and the enemies increase one by one before attacking Jiang Ming's Piquet ball. After all, only Zhang Tian and a few of his followers came over this time, but Jiang Ming's enemies are definitely not limited to these few people. Because he knows that the means he is going to use this time will take time, Zhang Qing's mood is quite stable. Seeing Talonflame fall to the ground with exhausted stamina, Ekans, although his contest condition was not very good, still launched a strong attack towards Talonflame. Jiang Ming, who was thinking, quickly looked in the direction of Talonflame and soon saw that the stamina of the fiery Civ Eagle began to run out. After all, he can wait. Good job, Zhao. Jiang Ming, who was still thinking, looked at the dizzy Ekans and quickly seized the opportunity to shout to Ralts, "Use confusion." Under Jiang Ming's gaze, Ralts, who defeated Ekans, stopped where he was and actually began to upgrade and evolve. If it were normal, Jiang Ming would never let Ralts use confusion because even if it was used, the chance of success was actually very low. The skill of electricity may not be successful, especially when Ralts is not at a high level now, the possibility of success is even lower. Under Jiang Ming's command, Ralts quickly used confusion on Ekans. Under Ralts' confusion, Ekans had no ability to resist at all and fell straight to the ground after a while. Jiang Ming, who always knew whether he should change his mind or not, would not continue to insist on staying here when he could gain such a great benefit. Zhang Tian, who was originally planning to mock Jiang Ming, stared at Purify's Ralts with wide eyes, and his somewhat relaxed expression finally couldn't be relaxed. He looked at Jiang Ming with a ferocious expression. "You did it on purpose." He said that Talonflame had already consumed a lot of energy and should not have so much time to fight Ekans. Jiang Ming could have directly taken Talonflame back and used a new Pokémon to fight Ekans. But Jiang Ming did not do so. Instead, he let Talonflame consume a lot of physical strength and finally could not continue to attack, and then let Ralts, who seemed to be the lowest level and weakest, launch a fatal attack on Ekans. Looking at Jiang Ming's arrangement, Zhang Tian thought at first that this guy was too young and the arrangement was not in place. Now he knows that Ralts' upgrade bar was almost at the bottom before launching a fatal attack on Ekans. This time, Ekans he threw out became the last key to Ralts' upgrade. He actually helped Jiang Ming successfully upgrade a Pokémon at this time. This feeling of being calculated by others was very uncomfortable. Zhang Tian, who had originally wanted to break through the bottleneck, took out 2 Piquet balls in such an uncomfortable mood, intending that even if he couldn't take down 843 Jiang Ming at once, he must make Jiang Ming's Pokémon hurt. Jiang Ming, who had long known that this guy would definitely jump off the wall, was naturally prepared. Looking at the Ralts who had upgraded to Kirlia, Jiang Ming quickly shouted to Kirlia, "Use Life Dew on Talonflame." "Yeah." Kirlia sent out a growl. The little hand was raised and placed in front of her. In her beautiful light red eyes, super energy confusion bloomed and surged. After super energy confusion, the surging water element energy condensed. Under the combined action of super energy confusion and water elements, the water molecules in soaring in the sky gathered between Kirlia's hands. Life Dew, a recovery skill that only some Pokémon can master. Even most water-type Pokémon cannot master it. BCDC, but the Kirlia clan has the inheritance of mastering this skill. Jiang Ming didn't train it much at the beginning. Life Dew was quickly mastered by it. When exploring and searching for treasures in the secret realm, as long as you have Life Dew, the safety factor will undoubtedly be greatly improved. Under Kirlia's control, drops of water suddenly fell on Talonflame, who was lying on the ground. Talonflame, who was originally exhausted, was quickly restored by Life Dew. Feeling the physical strength coming back again, Talonflame flapped its wings and flew high, jumping up quickly. Jiang Ming took this opportunity to directly grab Kirlia and then drag Gardevoir onto Talonflame and began to command Talonflame to move forward. Perhaps knowing clearly that they were escaping this time, Talonflame did not make any counterattacks and quickly began to run at Jiang Ming's request. At the same time as they were running away, Zhang Tian's Pokémon was also released, attacking Talonflame in soaring in the sky. Fortunately, Zhang Tian's attack this time did not completely fall on Talonflame because the two Pokémon he released this time were ground Pokémon and could not hit Talonflame in soaring in the sky. Realizing that he had made a mistake, Zhang Tian's face turned pale and he quickly released another flying Pokémon to track Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming naturally couldn't really let him track him successfully. Although he was just trying to escape Beedrill's attack in a panic, he was actually observing the surrounding environment. Now they were not very far from the exit, and outside the exit someone was still guarding there. As long as he successfully took his Pokémon away from here and returned to the hall, Zhang Mo would not be able to attack him no matter how much he wanted to. Jiang Ming, who had made clear his goal, looked at Zhang Tian who was chasing him angrily behind him and quickly began to continue directing towards the exit. Talonflame is indeed a Pokémon that fights very hard and loves Jiang Ming very much, at least this time. Under Jiang Ming's command, Talonflame, whose physical strength was almost exhausted, continued to fly forward 10 times and dodge the attacks launched by Zhang Mo's Song-Flying Spirit. Seeing countless attacks coming down here one after another but being dodged by Talonflame, Jiang Ming clenched his fists and suddenly spoke to Zhang Tian behind him. "You can only chase me like this because I haven't reached a certain level yet. Wait, after a while it won't be you who comes to find me but I will go to find you." As a mercenary, Zhang Tian's emotions are actually very stable. After all, if his emotions are unstable, he may miss his plan. But Zhang Tian was very frustrated by the failure of several consecutive attacks on Jiang Ming. At this moment, hearing Jiang Ming's sudden taunt, Zhang Tian, who was already a little frustrated, stared at Jiang Ming fiercely. "At your age now, you can't catch up with me even if you are given a few more years." As he said this, he began to command his Pokémon very calmly, intending to launch the final attack on Talonflame when Jiang Ming's Talonflame slowed down. If there was only one level 30 Pokémon, Jiang Ming would not need to worry, but if there were several level 30 Pokémon staring at him, things would be different. The passage they ran through this time was a relatively remote passage with a river in front of it. Zhang Tian obviously didn't expect Jiang Ming to command Talonflame to dive, which caused him and his Pokémon to fly over. The thrown Dragonair dived into the river. When Zhang Tian and his Pokémon landed, an Aqua Tail suddenly appeared and hit Zhang Tian and his Pokémon. Jiang Ming was not stupid, since he knew that the people behind him would take some time. He should of course use this time to run away as soon as possible. This fatigue is likely to cause his Pokémon to be unable to leave Tilda and this secret realm will fall. After all, dealing with so many high-level Pokémon is actually a tiring task, especially now that most of Jiang Ming's Pokémon's stamina has been consumed, which is even more tiring. The man and Pokémon were suddenly thrown out a few meters away. Pokémon still wanted to get up, but Jiang Ming didn't want to waste too much time. Jiang Ming was waiting for this moment. When he was about to land in front of him with his Pokémon, Jiang Ming threw Dragonair directly into the river. Seeing that his reaction was very fast, seeing that Jiang Ming was about to land ground, although it flew over his head, he immediately began to command the Pokémon in his hand to land towards the ground. Looking at Zhang Tian who was still chasing him, Jiang Ming, who clearly felt that Talonflame was getting slower and slower, looked up at the exit passage of the Dongting Lake's secret realm that was just around the corner. Jiang Ming, who clearly felt Lai Jianen's concern for him, nodded firmly to Talonflame while holding Dragonair's Piquet Ball. Although a little surprised by Jiang Ming's command, Talonflame chose to obey after Jiang Ming nodded firmly. In order to avoid wasting this time, seeing that Zhang Tian and his Pokémon still wanted to get up, Jiang Ming quickly threw out Lucario who had been waiting for a long time. Although Talonflame was still holding on, Jiang Ming could feel that Talonflame was getting slower and slower. In order to avoid this from happening, looking at the situation of wolves in front and tigers behind, Jiang Ming clenched his fists and suddenly took out Dragonair's Spirit Ball and looked at Talonflame who was flying towards the exit with all his strength. Zhang Tian's strength was good, but the strength of the people behind Zhang Tian was not very good, So this time only Zhang Tian caught up and it would take some time for others to catch up. By the time they reacted, the man and Pokémon had been thrown out by the Aqua Tail. Lai Jianing is naturally the same. The combat power of these wild Pokémon in the high-level secret realm was still quite strong. Judging from the wave results of Lucario, the levels of several wild Pokémon were all above level 30. There were also several wild Pokémon wandering in the river. The obedient Talonflame suddenly dived when Zhang Tian's Pokémon behind him was about to catch up with him. The Lucario that had just been thrown out quickly sent a vacuum wave towards Zhang Tian and Zhang Tian's Pokémon in front to prevent the other party from getting up. Talonflame let out a short growl, then tilted his head to look at Jiang Ming in confusion, obviously reminding Jiang Ming that if he fell like this, he would be in danger. The sudden Aqua Tail made the man and Pokémon unable to react, and the flying Pokémon that was landing had no time to dodge. The continuous pursuit made Lai Kaining, who was already running madly with Jiang Ming, extremely tired. Just land in front of the river. Although most Pokémon have the ability to fight and think independently, those Pokémon will not be too self-centered under the command of the trainer. While the other party was being obstructed, Jiang Ming quickly put away Dragonair. At this time, Lucario also gave Talonflame, who was half dead, another life dew. With the life extension of Life Dew, Talonflame, who was originally quite tired, finally got up and took Jiang Ming and other Pokémon across the river to rush out of the Dongting Lake secret realm passage that was opening. Outside the passage was the hall. As soon as they rushed out, they saw the hall full of noise and well-trained troops patrolling Country Lord Zero. Looking at Jiang Ming and Jiang Ming's Pokémon who rushed out in a panic, the troops who had reminded Jiang Ming before entering the Dongting Lake secret realm came to Jiang Ming seriously. "Are you injured? Do you need treatment?" Suddenly receiving care, Jiang Ming turned his head to look at the passage behind him that was slowly closing, and he breathed a sigh of relief while smiling and looking back. Although he looked embarrassed and ran in a hurry, he was not hurt, and his Pokémon did not have any injuries, so it did not look like he needed treatment. Just when Jiang Ming shook his head and thought that neither he nor his Pokémon needed treatment, Talonflame, who had rushed out of the secret realm with Jiang Ming, suddenly made a creaking sound. The sudden sound attracted Jiang Ming's attention directly. Just as Jiang Ming looked at Talonflame, the Talonflame that made the sound suddenly fell from midair. Jiang Ming, who was still sitting on Talonflame, reacted quickly and quickly pulled the other Pokémon to the ground. As soon as he jumped to the ground, the fiery falcon smashed straight down to the ground. The sound of the midair smashing into the ground was a bit loud, and Jiang Ming, who was standing on the ground, could even clearly feel a small vibration from the ground. The vibration ended quickly and smoke and dust rose from the ground. When the smoke and dust went up, a Talonflame was lying on the ground looking half dead. Jiang Ming, who thought that neither he nor his Pokémon needed treatment, opened his mouth in surprise, but he didn't expect Talonflame to be unable to hold on. After being surprised, Jiang Ming quickly pulled Talonflame up and looked at the team members around him who asked him if he needed help. The team members who were originally planning to leave after being rejected silently looked at Talonflame beside Jiang Ming. After a while, they quickly arranged for the doctor who treated the Pokémon to come in a hurry. The professional quality of the team watching outside the Dongting Lake secret realm is still quite high. With their quick help, Jiang Ming and Talonflame were quickly treated. Just as Jiang Ming thought he and other Pokémon really had no problems, they were just a little tired, but Talonflame was different. Originally, Talonflame should have been unable to continue fighting. After all, after countless times of consuming his physical strength, Talonflame needed to get enough rest before continuing to fight. Unfortunately, in that situation, Jiang Ming really needed Talonflame, a flying Pokémon, to run with him, so even though he knew Talonflame needed to rest, Jiang Ming still asked Lucario and Curlia to replenish Talonflame's physical strength, forcing Talonflame to continue to consume his physical strength. Talonflame also obviously knew the crisis they were in at that time, so even though he felt tired, Talonflame continued to consume himself. This consumption did allow Jiang Ming to escape from the secret realm of Dongting Lake, but it also caused Talonflame to fall 5.4 times. This fall was different from the usual fatigue, Mikey, and could not be recovered by rest. Jiang Ming, who learned from the doctor that Talonflame needed treatment, had a headache and looked at Talonflame with a little disappointment. Sorry. Yotilda. Talonflame made a short cry and suddenly slowly raised its wings and flapped towards Jiang Ming. The movement of the wings flapping against his body was not big, like a kind of comfort. Jiang Ming, who was a little disappointed, couldn't help but smile at this comforting gesture. You take good care of the treatment and I'll take you out to play after the treatment is over. Most Pokémon can't resist Captivate going out to play. In Jiang Ming's promise, Talonflame, who was a little tired, suddenly looked up and excitedly sent out one growl after another to Jiang Ming. Accompanying Talonflame's growl was the doctor's voice. Finally, Talonflame was taken farther and farther away by the doctor. Seeing Talonflame still shouting excitedly even at a distance, Jiang Ming couldn't help but turn his head and look at Gardevoir beside him. Thank you. Although Gardevoir didn't actually help Jiang Ming do anything in some of the things this time, Gardevoir has always been Jiang Ming's last support. It is precisely because of Gardevoir's existence that although Jiang Ming and his friends ran tired and were still fighting hard, 12 never felt that his life would be in trouble. Gardevoir, who received this kind of gratitude, obviously knew what Jiang Ming was thinking, so Gardevoir did not refuse this gratitude and nodded to Jiang Ming as a matter of course. Jiang Ming smiled and felt much better after suddenly being thanked as a matter of course. With this good mood, Jiang Ming released all the Pokémon that could stay on land and then waved his hand. Talonflame still needs treatment here, let's buy some things here and wait for a while. The group of Pokémon who were fighting hard in the secret realm breathed a sigh of relief, and they were obviously happy because they could relax. Jiang Ming, who had long guessed that this group of Pokémon would definitely feel happy because they could relax this time, quickly started walking in the hall with a group of Pokémon. In addition to many props, there are also some Pokémon food and Pokémon toys in the Hall of Dongting Lake's secret realm. When Jiang Ming was playing here with a group of Pokémon, he could clearly see that there were still many trainers who came out of the secret realm and were resting, and their Pokémon were coming. This friendly environment with Pokémon and trainer made Jiang Ming feel satisfied. After making sure that there was no threat in this environment, Jiang Ming found a place to sit down and wave to the Pokémon around him who were tired but still wanted to play a good game with you. A group of Pokémon left excitedly during Jiang Ming's actions. Only the Pokémon who had just come out of the secret realm was very happy. Kirlia, who evolved from Ralts, did not leave. Jiang Ming, who found a place to sit down in Solaceon, looked up at Kirlia, who did not leave, and then looked at the other Pokémon who were happily playing outside and looked at Kirlia in confusion. In Jiang Ming's eyes, Kirlia suddenly pointed in a direction and then tugged at Jiang Ming's clothes. Probably worried that Jiang Ming would not want to follow it, it pulled very hard. Jiang Ming, who had no idea what was going on with Kirlia, looked at it hesitantly. Kirlia, who was annoyed by Jiang Ming's hesitation, pointed to the front and looked at Jiang Ming with dissatisfaction. Jiang Ming, who clearly felt Kirlian's dissatisfaction, could only follow Kirlia with a puzzled face. Their encounter did not last long. After walking only about 1 or 2 meters, Kirlia stopped. As Kirlia stopped, Jiang Ming looked up and saw another Kirlia standing on the left of Kirlia. That Kirlia seemed very sad. When Jiang Ming and when Kirlia came here, the Kirlia was looking down at the ground, exuding an unhappy aura. Jiang Ming, who didn't know why Kirlia brought him here, finally understood after seeing this look. Kirlia is a Pokémon that is extremely sensitive to emotions. There is even a statement in Kirlia's encyclopedia that the trainer is expected to maintain a happy mood to train Kirlia. From these statements, it can be seen that Kirlia is a Pokémon that can be sensitive to many emotions. Now Kirlia obviously feels the emotions of another sad Kirlia, so he brought him here on purpose. Jiang Ming, who was brought here specially, did not think that Kirlia's behavior was problematic. He just squatted beside Kirlia with a serious expression. Do you want me to help that, Kirlia? This sentence obviously hit Kirlia's mind. Kirlia, who was standing by and did not choose to go over, nodded excitedly to Jiang Ming during Jiang Ming's words. Jiang Ming smiled and rubbed Kirlia's head after receiving this nod and then quickly put Kirlia back into the Pokéball. Curlia, who was taken back, seemed to be still worried that Jiang Ming could not solve this problem, so he knocked on the piquet ball hand a few times. Jiang Ming patted the piquet ball soothingly. I will go and communicate with the trainer of this Curlia. This comfort was obviously very useful to Chirugoan. Curlia, who was a little tired and just wanted to have a good rest, soon calmed down after getting Jiang Ming's promise. Putting the quiet piquet ball back into the bag, Jiang Ming went directly to the injured Curlia. He just wanted to talk to this Curlia, but just as he was about to speak, Stephanie, who was standing not far from Curlia, came out and glared at Jiang Ming with dissatisfaction. What do you want to say to my Pokémon? The sudden questioning made Jiang Ming pause what he wanted to say, but he originally wanted to understand Curlia's situation, so he paused for a while. Jiang Ming quickly reacted, and Soleson looked up at the Kairugoan trainer who was staring at him angrily. Your Curlia doesn't seem very happy. Stephanie glanced at the unhappy Curlia, and it was obvious that Curlia had a depressed atmosphere. She looked at Jiang Ming with a bit of worry and nodded irritably. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that it is not very happy. This tone is still aggressive. Jiang Ming looked at the Stephanie in front of him with a smile and probably understood why Kairugoan was unhappy. Because Ralts can evolve into Curlia, Jiang Ming has learned a lot about Curlia. One of the things to note is that Kairugoan, who can often feel the trainer's emotions, will be affected by the trainer's emotions. The trainer in front of him is obviously not in a good mood, so how can Curlia's mood be good? Jiang Ming, who clearly felt that the trainer had emotional problems, said to Stephanie in front of him with a bit of helplessness. Maybe you can find out what conditions are needed to cultivate Curlia. The trainer, who didn't know why Jiang Ming said this, seemed very irritated and had no interest in paying attention to Jiang Ming at all. Hearing Jiang Ming's words, she just waved her hand at Jiang Ming in annoyance. I don't have the time for the time being. After saying this, the trainer was probably worried that Jiang Ming would waste time, so he turned around and wanted to leave with Curlia. Jiang Ming was not a person who liked to meddle in other people's business. Seeing Curlia's trainer turning around and wanting to leave, he didn't really want to follow him. After all, the reminders had been given, and it was up to the trainer to decide what to do next. If Curlia grew up to be a not-so-good Pokémon because of the trainer's emotions, that would be the consequence that the trainer should bear. However, Jiang Ming didn't intend to meddle in other people's business, but his Pokémon couldn't bear to let this matter pass so easily. Seeing Curlia being taken away, Curlia, who was standing in the piquet ball, knocked the piquet ball excitedly. Jiang Ming, who felt the emotions of his own Pokémon, was helpless for a moment, and could only quickly run towards the trainer who was taking Curlia away in front of him before he went over to block the person. Are you looking for trouble? Curlia's trainer, who was stopped by Jiang Ming again and again, was obviously dissatisfied with Jiang Ming's behavior. She stepped back fiercely and stared at Jiang Ming closely. Although my Pokémon doesn't look like the contest condition is very good, its combat power is still very strong. If you must look for trouble, then I don't mind letting you try my Pokémon's hypnosis. If a trainer who has no idea how to train Curlia will definitely feel unhappy when hearing Jiang Ming's words. Just as Jiang Ming was watching the two Curlias communicating with a relaxed expression, Curlia's trainer also reacted at this time and asked a question with some hesitation. After about a few seconds, the trainer who was looking at Curlia came back to his senses and spoke with a little disappointment. In the process of training Curlia, the mood of the trainer is a very important factor. Your Curlia doesn't seem to be in a good mood. Jiang Ming's Curlia danced and started to point fingers at the trainer's Curlia. Jiang Ming, who was standing quietly by the side and watching the scene, looked at Kurulunen, who was happily heading to a nearby store, and his expression also eased. With this decision, Jiang Ming shook his head helplessly at Stephanie. Did your Pokémon ask you to come and communicate with it? Therefore, the knowledge Jiang Ming now had was only written knowledge, but if he wanted to have some real training skills, it would take some time. Being so alerted suddenly, Jiang Ming could only take out his Curlia helplessly. Jiang Ming was already prepared for the trainer in front of him to feel dissatisfied with his words. Stephanie seemed a little reluctant to believe Jiang Ming's attitude. Finally understanding why Curlia was so unhappy, Jiang Ming looked at Stephanie in front of him silently, and for a moment he didn't know how to comfort her. Just when Jiang Ming thought that the other party was still going to refuse, the silent trainer sighed and waved his hand. After all, the Kairugoan in Jiang Ming's hand had just evolved not long ago, so it had plenty of time. The two Pokémon stopped talking nonsense and left here, calling each other. This meant that Curlia wanted to take Jiang Ming's business and leave. I am not the trainer of this Pokémon, it is my father's Pokémon. My father entered the Dongting Lake Secret Realm during the last Dongting Lake Secret Realm. He nodded calmly and then glanced at the Curlia in front of him. In addition to not getting a good result, the trainer was probably injured, otherwise it would be impossible for his Pokémon to be taken away by his daughter. Curlia, who was originally depressed, became excited in an instant during this action. Jiang Ming, who received such an inquiry, naturally had no intention of hiding it. Seeing the Curlia that Jiang Ming took out, the trainer in front of him stiffened his movements. Taking advantage of the other party's stiff movements, Curlia next to Jiang Ming rushed to the trainer's Curlia. But after a while, probably understanding the thoughts of Jiang Ming's flash Curlia, Curlia hesitated and suddenly looked at her trainer. Then Stephanie didn't seem to need Jiang Ming's comfort. She smiled at Jiang Ming and then suddenly walked towards him excitedly. As for some of the things that happened later, the trainer in front of him, BCCD, did not explain it too clearly. But from Curlia's attitude and the trainer's irritable contest condition, it can be seen that the original trainer of Curlia who entered the Dongting Lake Secret Realm obviously did not get any good results. The trainer, who was still wary of Jiang Ming, was silent for a while. This is a good question, but Jiang Ming couldn't answer it. Do you have any way to make it happier? What surprised him was that after he said these words, the trainer did not feel unhappy about it. Instead, he looked at Curlia with a helpless expression. Jiang Ming, who didn't have the correct training knowledge at all, didn't tell the other party that he had the training ability at this time. The trainer was amused by Jiang Ming's words. Curlia, who was a little sad because of trainer's injury, actually found happiness in the Flash Magikarp's very calm jump. This gesture was too clear, and Jiang Ming, who was about to refuse, fell silent. Gardevoir looked at Jiang Ming calmly, hoping that it would give him a sense of security, and then patted Jiang Ming calmly, looking like a gentle elder comforting a younger generation. Anyway, the fact that he took the Flash Magikarp away would be discovered sooner or later. This time, the fact that he caught a Flash Magikarp in the secret realm of Dongting Lake has not been publicized yet. He will be beaten for being so high-profile. The usually obedient Ralts were not very obedient after evolving into Curlia. Seeing Jiang Ming staring at her, Curlia probably knew that her behavior was not right, so she quickly pointed to a pool not far away and then happily pointed to the Magikarp in Jiang Ming's hand. Being too high-profile would also get you beaten. With Gardevoir by his side, he would feel a little safe even if he might get beaten. She looked up and down at Jiang Ming hesitantly. At this moment, the two Curlia playing in front suddenly ran towards Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming's Flash Curlia took the Piquet ball from Jiang Ming first. What surprised Jiang Ming was that when he came back with Gardevoir, things were not as he guessed, but a little beyond his expectations. Tilde. He thought Curlia was just fooling around. Even if Flash Carp was released, it would be unlikely to appease Curlia, who was sad about the trainer's accident. Then he made a gesture of begging. Curlia's trainer stood by and watched Curlia, who finally adjusted her mood, excitedly came to Jiang Ming and thanked him repeatedly. Jiang Ming didn't expect Curlia to take the Magikarp's Piquet ball directly, so he wanted to grab it. That was the Piquet ball with Flash Magikarp. He looked at the trainers coming and going around him with a headache. After a while, he gritted his teeth and reluctantly agreed to Curlia's decision. Fortunately, although this Pokémon was a little rebellious, it was not very rebellious. After several consecutive actions, Jiang Ming finally knew clearly that Curlia was determined to use Flash Magikarp to coax the unhappy Curlia behind him. Jiang Ming, who inexplicably saw them adjust their mood, looked at the trainer speechlessly. "Don't thank me, I didn't expect Magikarp to have such an effect." Of course, Jiang Ming was also amused. The comforted Jiang Ming took Gardevoir back to Curlia with a smile. Jiang Ming didn't expect Curlia to be so rebellious, so he stopped and looked at Curlia thoughtfully. Looking at the trainers who came closer one after another because of the appearance of Flash Magikarp, Jiang Ming's eyelids were twitching wildly, and he really wanted to run away right now. Unfortunately, Jiang Ming did not have this plan. After all, if this Pokémon was really placed in the pool, it would definitely be discovered by others. This meant that she was going to put Flash Magikarp in the pool to play with it. Seeing Jiang Ming trying to snatch Kirlia, he quickly retreated. Seeing Jiang Ming's action pause, Lu Lian quickly came to Jiang Ming's side and made a gesture of begging again. I don't know how these two Pokémon play, but the two Pokémon who found happiness happily gathered together and actually adjusted their mood. It is indeed a good thing that Kirlia can recover, but it is not a good thing to expose Flash Magikarp. Although he had this awareness after agreeing with Kirlia's approach, Jiang Ming still called Gardevoir back immediately. Jiang Ming, who did not want to be so high-profile, was about to shake his head at Kirlia, and at this moment, Kirlia pointed at the Kirlia behind it again. Maybe God heard his desire to escape, but Jiang Ming, who was still watching the trainers around him, suddenly heard footsteps. Then a strange trainer came to Jiang Ming and said excitedly, "Your Talonflame is fighting with an Ekans." This news came at the right time. Thinking of Talonflame in the treatment room, Jiang Ming reacted instantly and quickly put away the Flash Magikarp. The 300 Pokémon who were having fun obviously didn't expect Jiang Ming to suddenly attack. Jiang Ming's Kirlia tilted her head towards Jiang Ming in displeasure. It seemed that she was very unhappy with Jiang Ming's behavior. Although the other Kirlia did not show an unhappy attitude, her mood seemed to be depressed. The different behaviors of the two Kirlia made Jiang Ming feel that he had done something wrong, but he is not an overly sensitive trainer. Isn't it just a small mistake? This is for the sake of his own life. It's wrong to make a small mistake. Jiang Ming, who didn't think that he had a problem with this small mistake, quickly picked up Kirlia. Just when Kirlia was a little unhappy, Jiang Ming said seriously, "Talonflame seems to have fought with the Pokémon of the mercenary who ran out after us." This sentence instantly diverted the attention of Kirlia, who was still angry. After making sure that Kirlia's attention was diverted, Jiang Ming smiled and waved to the Kirlia next to him. "We still have some things to do here. After the things are dealt with, I will let Kirlia and Magikarp play with you, okay?" Although Kirlia can clearly feel the emotions of the trainer and is very sensitive to emotions, in fact, this type of Pokémon is easy to coax. As long as you treat them better and recognize them, they will be applauded. Jiang Ming's Kirlian is like this, and the Kirlia in front is also like this. When they learned that Jiang Ming's Pokémon had some troubles and Jiang Ming needed to rush to solve the troubles, the two Kirlia, who were not happy at first, nodded firmly and acted like deputy districts. It looks like they are going to help Jiang Ming solve the enemy together. Jiang Ming, who received this good news, laughed and did not really let the two Kirlians go with him to solve the enemy, but took his own. The Pokémon hurriedly headed directly towards the treatment room. When they went there, the battle between Talonflame and Ekans had not yet ended. Jiang Ming just ran in and saw that this area was beginning to be turned upside down. Countless instruments fell on the ground. The doctors seemed to have long been accustomed to Pokémon fighting here. Looking at the instruments falling on the ground, a group of doctors retreated silently, and then one of the doctors looked up at Jiang Ming and took out a calculator very skillfully. "I think your Pokémon will not be able to stop in the short term, otherwise we should discuss the compensation first." The man who had called Jiang Ming back anxiously just now was a little happy when he heard about the compensation. He looked at Jiang Ming with a computer. Jiang Ming, who had thought that this matter was so serious, twitched his mouth and finally understood why they called him back so anxiously. It feels like this is all for money. However, money is not particularly important to Jiang Ming, so although he was a little speechless that they were so anxious for money, Jiang Ming was still a point area of solace. The doctors were obviously very happy to meet a trainer like Jiang Ming who was so cooperative. Doctors 4 and 6 who were holding computers were even more amusing. They were calculating while comforting Jiang Ming. "Don't worry about your Pokémon. Do you see the security guards coming and going around? If there is a big problem, they will come to control it. The hall is definitely different from the secret realm of Dongting Lake. Many things in the secret realm are unpredictable, and they will not enter the secret realm to protect the trainer. But everything in the hall is under their control. As long as the trainers returned to the hall, no matter how troublesome they would not be able to cause any big trouble in the hall." The things that could be taken out in the middle of the hall were basically small things that were allowed. Jiang Ming, who was a little worried that the duel between Talonflame and Ekans would affect the hall, was relieved by this comfort. He calmly followed the group of doctors to calculate the losses around him. The time for calculating the losses was not long. After all, the things in such a medical room were actually quite limited. Therefore, after a while, Jiang Ming paid half of the loss fee and was allowed to take Talonflame out. Jiang Ming, who was allowed, walked towards Talonflame with Pokémon. As soon as he walked over, he saw Zhang Tian 12 standing in the medical room at this moment. Seeing Jiang Ming walking towards this side, Zhang Tian pointed to the two Pokémon who were fighting fiercely with great calmness. "Don't worry, I know it's not suitable to fight in the hall." Although he chased Jiang Ming the most in the Dongting Lake's secret realm, Zhang Tian obviously knew what to do and what not to do. After Jiang Ming left the Dongting Lake's secret realm, Zhang Tian, who had chased Jiang Ming the most fiercely, was the first to calm down. Jiang Ming, who was still a little worried that Zhang Tian would cause trouble, looked around Zhang Tian and confirmed that this person would not cause any trouble in the middle of the hall, and he was relieved immediately. Zhang Tian, who clearly felt that Jiang Ming was relieved, snorted and then said a little unhappy, "I won't do it, but there are always people who don't follow the rules in this world. I suggest you be careful." His reminder was actually a kind reminder. Jiang Ming was a little surprised that he didn't expect him to give such a reminder, but he reacted quickly. Soleson was about to nod. The doctor behind Jiang Ming took a look at the situation of Jiang Ming and Zhang Tian. Seeing that Jiang Ming was about to nod, the doctor immediately laughed and said, "Those security personnel are set up for people who don't follow the rules." Jiang Ming, who was about to nod, paused for a moment and felt a little funny. Although the doctor didn't seem to have any bad intentions, what he said was quite right. Even if someone didn't follow the rules, so what? Is Zhang Tian a rule-abiding person? Now he is forced to follow the rules. Is it because he wants to follow the rules? Jiang Ming is not so naive as to think that the man in front of him stopped because he wanted to follow the rules. This man obviously knew the members of the troops in the hall and the power of those important machines, so he stopped. He knew the importance of these things here, so other people should know it too. So even if they really didn't think about it and attacked directly, it didn't matter to Jiang Ming. In the end, those who didn't follow the rules would definitely be taken down. What's more, Jiang Ming has someone behind him. With a backer, Jiang Ming feels very safe. The extremely safe Jiang Ming calmly watched the battle between Talonflame and Ekans with a group of Pokémon. The battle ended half an hour later. Ekans seemed to be more seriously injured than Talonflame. Talonflame was just a little tired, but Ekans was really injured. 880. This injury made Ekans not have much strength to fight with other Pokémon. Ekans, who had no strength, was naturally pressed firmly under Talonflame's claws. At first, Ekans wanted to struggle, but unfortunately, due to insufficient strength, Ekans could only make a desperate cry for help after half an hour. With this cry for help, this Pokémon duel was over. Looking at the hair and scales on the ground and the messy equipment around, Jiang Ming silently put Talonflame back into his Pokéball. Zhang Tian raised his eyelids and looked at Jiang Ming, who wanted to leave after taking Talonflame back, and took Ekans back into his Pokéball with some displeasure and honestly paid the fine. The two sides tacitly parted ways in this battle, but these trainers were very smart. They knew clearly that Gardevoir's fighting power was still there and it was only temporarily restrained. In addition, this place was the hall outside the Dongting Lake's secret realm. If the attack was too strong, it would likely affect other rateless trainers here, so they were trapped. Even if Gardevoir was powerful, it was obvious that he couldn't break free in the short term with the combined efforts of several trainers. Unfortunately, he couldn't help, and the others didn't have patience either. Although he did not spend much time in the Dongting Lake's secret realm this time, his gains were actually quite large. Flash Magikarp really couldn't do anything for him now, but under his training, this Flash Crocodile King is likely to become one of the best Flash Carp dragons in the country. When Jiang Ming had a grim expression because Gardevoir was arrested, a small hand hit Jiang Ming's leg. Because they knew clearly that they could not trap Gardevoir for too long, these trainers sneered, and then when Jiang Ming thought they would attack Gardevoir, they actually brought their own Pokémon to pull Gardevoir back into the Dongting Lake's secret realm to serve as a minister. In addition to harvesting a few Pecha berries, he also harvested an evolved Kirlia and a special Flash Magikarp. But Gardevoir was his mother's Pokémon, so he naturally couldn't just throw away his mother's Pokémon Salacin. Like Jiang Ming, there were also Jiang Ming's Pokémon who couldn't abandon Gardevoir, but it was impossible to trap this Pokémon for too long. He quickly threw out his Pokémon and let his Pokémon attack those trainers. After they dispersed completely, Jiang Ming first went to the doctor to confirm Lai Jianshuang's condition. After confirming that Talonflame was safe and no longer needed treatment, Jiang Ming took Talonflame and walked directly to the outside of the Dongting Lake's secret realm hall. Thinking of the great achievements of Flash Magikarp in the future, Jiang Ming was full of joy in his heart, and he couldn't help but want to take these Pokémon home to train them well. If you still want your Pokémon, come find us in the Dongting Lake's secret realm. Gardevoir, who was about to attack other trainers, reacted quickly and turned his head to look at the trainer rushing towards him. They couldn't do anything too bad to Jiang Ming in the hall outside the Dongting Lake's secret realm, but it was different inside the secret realm. The Chen family was very proud when they thought that there were many trainers in the Dongting Lake's secret realm who had been bid by Jiang Ming and were eyeing the Flash Magikarp in Jiang Ming's hand. Jiang Ming's eyelids jumped, and he didn't expect these trainers to be so insidious. Seeing them tightly grabbing Gardevoir and throwing several piquet balls at Gardevoir, he naturally didn't intend to let them go. While Gardevoir was distracted, the other trainers who were worried that Gardevoir would attack suddenly had their eyes light up and grabbed Gardevoir. Gardevoir reacted quickly. When he saw so many trainers coming together, Gardevoir immediately blocked in front of Jiang Ming and pretended to attack these trainers. Jiang Ming had a headache watching them quickly drag Gardevoir into the secret realm. He didn't expect that they would be dragged in again not long after they ran out. At this moment, a trainer suddenly rushed towards Shauna. The trainer who entered later even waved to Jiang Ming proudly. Just as Jiang Ming was about to leave the hall happily with his Pokémon, a group of trainers who couldn't hold back suddenly rushed towards Jiang Ming. They firmly believed that as long as they entered the Dongting Lake's secret realm, they would have all the advantages. Zhao Yu Jiang Ming, who clearly felt that his Pokémon was a little anxious about Gardevoir's incident, didn't waste any words. He quickly drew the Lai Neng Wying next to him and jumped into the Dongting Lake's secret realm with other Pokémon. Other trainers who heard the information came one after another, and some trainers who were a little interested in the Flash Magikarp in Jiang Ming's hand hurriedly followed him into the secret realm. Trainers who were not interested in the Flash Magikarp in Jiang Ming's hand gathered together and chattered. During the time when Kirlia was getting along with another Kirlia, many people already knew that Jiang Ming had a Flash Magikarp. The chattering group of trainers looked at the entrance and exit of the Dongting Lake 310 secret realm hesitantly, a little eager to move but not very brave. After all, a trainer who could make a name for himself among so many trainers and get the Flash Magikarp was not a simple trainer. If they followed along to join in the fun, they would probably be solved by the master. But they would not be willing to not join in the fun. After all, it was a Flash Magikarp. Just when the group of trainers were looking at Huthut and didn't know whether to make a decision, Zhang Tian, who heard the news and rushed over, looked at the entrance and exit of Dongting Lake's secret realm, which had been empty for a long time, and his eyelids were twitching. After a while, he entered the secret realm by himself. Just when Zhang Tian rushed into the Dongting Lake's secret realm with Pokémon, Jiang Ming was already chasing him in the secret realm on Talonflame. The target of those trainers was still Jiang Ming after all. Gardevoir had been raised for too long and was too high in level. They knew clearly that they could not control this Pokémon. Therefore, they did not intend to control Gardevoir at this time, but just wanted to use Gardevoir to lure Jiang Ming to the trap they had prepared long ago. For this lure, they naturally would not run too fast. Jiang Ming's pursuit with the fiery arrow was very effective. Those people would stop and wait for them for a while after running for a while. Looking at these trainers who treated him like a fool, Jiang Ming sat on Liu Yinshuang's head and spoke to Gardevoir with an extremely ugly face. Use Mystical Fire. Gardevoir, who was tightly held by a group of trainers, looked up at Jiang Ming's direction and then suddenly flamethrower at the group of trainers behind him. Because Gardevoir had not launched an attack just now, these trainers had actually relaxed their vigilance against Gardevoir. They thought that Gardevoir would not attack Salason in the short term, and Pokémon also had their own stamina bars. If you launch an attack in an unstable situation, you may not have enough stamina to deal with other things later. But they didn't expect that just when they relaxed their vigilance and thought that Gardevoir might want to save his strength and would not attack in the short term, Gardevoir would suddenly flamethrower at them. The sudden flames made the group of trainers who were sprayed all over their faces jump up. This flame is too strong. How high is the level of this Pokémon? How should I know? I just think that the level of this Pokémon is not simple. Each trainer has his own special ability. Obviously, these trainers' abilities do not include the ability to see the level of Pokémon. Because they don't have it, they can only feel that Gardevoir is very strong but don't know where this Pokémon is strong. At this moment, being sprayed by the powerful flame of Gardevoir, these trainers are so excited. But it is obvious that they have also seen the strength of Gardevoir, so even if they are excited, they dare not touch Gardevoir. Taking advantage of their fear of touching Salason, Jiang Ming certainly did not waste time. He quickly rushed down to Gardevoir with Talonflame, who was arresting at the limit. Gardevoir had been waiting for Jiang Ming on the ground for a long time. Seeing Talonflame swooping down, Gardevoir immediately stretched out his hand. Shanai. Jiang Ming was very fast. When Gardevoir sent out this growl, Jiang Ming also grabbed Gardevoir and dragged Gardevoir directly onto Talonflame's back. Hearing Jiang Ming's words, Lucario, who was originally planning to continue attacking, stopped instantly and retreated quickly. Lucario's autonomous attack ability is actually very strong. When Jiang Ming shouted at Lucario, Lucario had actually fought with other Pokémon for several moves. As soon as Jiang Ming threw Lucario, he used Thunder Punch on Squirtle, but there are always accidents in everything. Jiang Ming, who didn't expect the enemy to use this trick, changed his expression and threw Lucario towards Squirtle with gritted teeth. Jiang Ming, who didn't even have time to jump into the crack to fish out Pokémon, looked at the crack that suddenly opened and suddenly merged, and his face changed. Such a cautious man encountered an accident this time. This crack seemed to be just to take Lucario away. When Lucario disappeared, the crack closed instantly. They looked at each other and then one of the trainers said tremblingly, "In fact, we really don't have the ability to cause such a big underground crack loss. Except for Talonflame, which had to use some strength because it needed to carry him flying. Jiang Ming wanted the other Pokémon to preserve their strength." Feeling Gardevoir standing firm on his body, Talonflame quickly sprinted forward. Jiang Ming's decision was right. Cautious actions will allow Jiang Ming to go further in the secret realm of Dongting Lake. And he fell straight down the moment the crack appeared because he didn't react in time. It has only been half a day since he left the Dongting Lake secret realm. He really didn't expect that in just half a day, those people in the Dongting Lake secret realm actually did so many things, even creating underground cracks. As soon as he landed, Jiang Ming quickly took out the Piquet ball and shouted to Lucario, "Lucario, come back." Just when Lucario was about to return to his side, the ground suddenly emitted a vibration, and Lucario saw a crack in the ground before he could even react. When Jiang Ming reacted and wanted to catch Lucario, Lucario had completely disappeared in the crack. Squirtle, who still had water from the water gun on his body, suddenly became stiff under the thunder and lightning attack. Jiang Ming was not very clear about the specific situation in this secret realm at the moment, so he did not intend to let his Pokémon consume too much power at this time. But Lucario, who has strong attack ability, is very obedient. What surprised Jiang Ming was that when Jiang Ming showed a very sad and upset look, the group of trainers did not show any joy for it but were confused and at a loss. Jiang Ming, who felt extremely unhappy about this matter, looked up at the trainers standing not far away and said with a bit of an ugly face, "You guys really tried every possible way to get the Flash Magikarp." Talonflame, whose face was suddenly covered with water gun, instantly lost its balance and began to crash towards the ground in a twisted manner. They seemed to have been waiting for a long time. Seeing Jiang Ming and Talonflame rushing forward, one of the trainers immediately threw out his Pokémon. The sudden appearance of the Squirtle did not give Jiang Ming too much time to react. Just when Jiang Ming's Talonflame had not yet taken off, the Squirtle's water gun sprayed directly towards Talonflame. A Squirtle appeared in front of Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming had already prepared for their smug faces, even planned to take advantage of their smugness to get more information from them to see if he could find out where Lucario was. With Lucario's attack, Squirtle, who suddenly launched an attack, was successfully held back, and Jiang Ming finally landed smoothly with Talonflame. According to Jiang Ming's usual understanding, the trainers whose plans succeeded should be extremely proud at this time. And just as they were sprinting forward, several trainers ran out in front of them again. Thank God. Jiang Ming, who didn't want to pay attention to these trainers at all, stared at the water surface. At this moment, a familiar Pokémon Shining emerged from underwater. Not sure if he was being too sensitive, Jiang Ming pulled the corner of his mouth and asked tentatively, "Did you find Lucario?" The staring lasted a little long. Several trainers who had not dared to come over to provoke Jiang Ming moved over silently and were a little eager to move. Both sides stared at each other. The fact that an invisible and intangible enemy took Lucario away was definitely more serious than the people in front of him taking him away. The Lucario incident was even more difficult for Jiang Ming to accept. Compared to the calm and smart Dragonair, Flash Magikarp was obviously not so calm. But Lucario had been in trouble, so Jiang Ming really didn't feel like paying attention to these trainers. He could clearly feel that these people's combat power was not particularly strong. Under Gardevoir's fire attack, these people didn't even have any ability to resist. Watching Dragonair sinking quickly to the bottom of the water, Flash Magikarp looked at Jiang Ming with a pair of dead fish eyes in despair. Dragonair nodded calmly and quickly entered the underwater. If it didn't work on the ground, then of course they could only work on the underwater side. This sentence was like a switch. Flash Magikarp, who had been keeping his dead fish eyes open, finally shook his fish tail and gave a definite response to Jiang Ming's question. Jiang Ming, who was stared at by this pair of dead fish eyes for no reason, stared at this not very obedient Pokémon calmly. Then a pair of very familiar dead fish eyes stared at Jiang Ming tightly, without any sound or action. But now when he heard his own enemies say that they were indeed not strong enough, and they were not even strong enough to take Lucario away, Jiang Ming's somewhat calm heart finally panicked. Even if Lucario was taken away, Jiang Ming was not panicked. After all, the enemies he faced were not strong enough. Unfortunately, because he had misunderstood the incident just now, he did not search immediately, and when he went to search now, there was no clue nearby. Whoa! From Flash Magikarp, Jiang Ming, who got a definite response from Magikarp, let out a deep breath and shouted in a way that made him laugh and cry. Several trainers who were eager to try to get caught by Flash Benito King at this time pinched the Poké Ball in their hands in disappointment and murmured in dissatisfaction. They said it sincerely, and Jiang Ming, who originally thought that it was their 53 who was doing the trick, changed his face in this sincere reply. As soon as the two Pokémon thrown out by Jiang Ming appeared on the water, Jiang Ming quickly directed the two Pokémon. Go into the water and see if there is a passage leading to somewhere underwater. It was precisely because he could clearly feel that these people's abilities were not very strong, so Jiang Ming actually didn't care about the enemies he faced. Perhaps feeling the influence of these trainers, Flash Magikarp, who had a pair of dead fish eyes and looked calm and a little stupid, suddenly went underwater. Magically, even with these dead fish eyes, Jiang Ming still saw some subtle emotions in them. If Lucario hadn't been in trouble just now, Jiang Ming might have played with these trainers and dug out the quinones of these trainers from them. Jiang Lu took a deep breath when he thought that he had no idea who took Lucario away from behind and rushed to report it in Zhaoguo. Jiang Ming was too lazy to pay attention to the murmurs of these trainers. For Jiang Ming, these trainers didn't really have much influence on him. Even the trainer who entered the Mega Secret Realm probably couldn't easily create a crack on the ground, and such a big crack. Perhaps worried that Jiang Ming might misunderstand, the trainer who said this tremblingly glanced at Jiang Ming and finally couldn't help but complain. If we really had this ability, we would have gone to the Mega Secret Realm a long time ago. Jiang Ming was a little dizzy after searching on land for a while and couldn't find it. He quickly took his Dragonair and Flash Magikarp to find a nearby water area. The other trainers seemed to agree with what this person said, and they couldn't help but nod their heads after hearing his words. After shouting, Jiang Ming lost interest in continuing to talk to the shiny Magikarp. For Jiang Ming, the most important thing right now is Lucario. Jiang Ming, who had no interest in continuing to communicate with the shiny Magikarp, quickly asked about Lucario's direction. Unfortunately, the shiny Magikarp with its dead fish eyes clearly couldn't explain Lucario's situation clearly. The two stared at each other for a while, and just as Jiang Ming was about to lose his patience, a splash sounded on the water again. Then a wailing sound came. Attracted by the sights, Jiang Ming suddenly turned his head and saw the Dragonair that had entered the water earlier swimming towards him excitedly. Dragonair, probably knowing that Lucario's situation was of utmost importance, quickly splashed water as it swam towards Jiang Ming, then excitedly pointed in a direction. Jiang Ming was incredibly excited to finally meet such a reliable elf. He casually recalled the shiny Magikarp, which was still floating on the surface with its dead fish eyes, and hurriedly headed in the direction that Dragonair had pointed. Dragonair was far more reliable than shiny Magikarp. Guided by Dragonair, Jiang Ming quickly followed the current to the vicinity of a cave. The cave was built on the right side of the end of the water. When Jiang Ming walked over, he could clearly hear the sound of rushing water inside, which was enough to prove that the water in this area was probably connected to the water in the cave. Jiang Ming wouldn't normally go into caves like this that have water inside. The space inside the cave was quite dark. Although Jiang Ming had brought a lot of props, including lighting equipment, they still couldn't quite get used to the darkness. Jiang Ming never takes risks in places he is not used to unless absolutely necessary. However, Hakron remained adamant, stating that Lucario was inside the cave. Jiang Ming, who had no intention of taking any risks, had no choice but to take the risk when he saw that Hakron was so determined. Jiang Ming, having decided to take the risk, recalled all of his other Pokémon into their Poké balls. In the end, only Hakuryu and Gardevoir remained outside. Two elves, one to guide the way and the other to be their last line of defense. Seeing that the two Pokémon were ready, Jiang Ming turned to the trainers who had been silently following him with a serious expression. "If you don't mind taking a risk, you can come in." Those trainers followed Jiang Ming the whole way, actually hoping to see if they could get a chance to snatch the shiny Magikarp from him. Unfortunately, Jiang Ming was extremely vigilant. Even when he went with Hakuryu to find Lucario, he did not give up on controlling his surroundings. This resulted in Jiang Ming noticing something was wrong and stopping them several times before they could even make a move. After the trainers, who had tried to attack Jiang Ming countless times without success, followed him to the vicinity of the cave, they realized that they could no longer attack him. The cave appears completely dark from the outside and no one knows what's inside. Lucario was inexplicably swallowed by the crack and has now reappeared near the cave, which seems really strange. Although they really wanted to get something out of Jiang Ming, the two trainers, who were also very concerned about their own lives, were torn between choosing the best option. In the end, they could only regretfully begin their retreat, deciding to let Jiang Ming go in by himself while they kept watch from outside. If something happens to Jiang Ming inside and he becomes extremely weak, then they will have a chance to completely take him down. With this excitement, several training sessions were held to determine the direction of Zhiguang's publication or release. 14,402,422, Feilu 210,102,090. Jiang Ming, who was being stared at, was speechless, but he didn't take them seriously. Within minutes, Jiang Ming successfully pulled Lucario back to land from the water. Jiang Ming, guessing that Lucario might want to take him somewhere, paused for a moment, then nodded trustingly at Lucario. For a while afterward, Jiang Ming carried the lighting equipment as he went in, listening to the sound of the water flowing around him. To Jiang Ming's surprise, just as he informed Lucario and hoped that Lucario would leave the secret realm with him as soon as possible, Lucario suddenly pointed in a direction and then firmly shook its head at Jiang Ming. Although he didn't know Lucario's current situation, Jiang Ming hesitated for a moment but still respected his own Pokémon. Jiang Luo, who was initially worried that Lucario might have problems, breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Lucario lying on the water without any major issues. He quickly took out a Poké ball and tried to recall Lucario. The ground was uneven, but there was nothing dangerous about it. Lucario, lying on the water, was of medium size and the current was not very strong, so it drifted slowly and steadily on the water. Respecting Lucario, Jiang Ming put away the Piquet ball and quickly ran towards Lucario. Jiang Ming, who was about to return Lucario to its Piquet ball, paused for a moment. He could tell that Lucario didn't want to go back to its Piquet ball. With the help of Hakron and the lighting equipment, Jiang Mingji successfully found Lucario in the winding cave in half an hour. Lucario, who had been clinging to Jiang Ming, suddenly brightened up and nodded firmly at Jiang Ming with a hint of excitement. Faced with an unknown enemy, these trainers were really not up to the task. The dragon that was leading Jiang Ming quickly dived into the water the same moment Jiang Ming entered the cave. Although somewhat surprised that Lucario was unwilling to leave the Dongting Lake's secret realm, Jiang Ming hesitated for a moment after confirming that Lucario would never harm him casually, before speaking to Lucario seriously. Luca, let's leave the hidden realm of Dongting Lake first. Jiang Ming, who was inexplicably affected by Lucario's emotions, raised an eyebrow slightly, not quite understanding what was going on with Lucario. However, Jiang Ming always firmly believed that his spirit would not harm him casually. Jiang Ming, after pulling Lucario back to the ground, looked around and realizing that the cave wasn't that dangerous, breathed a sigh of relief and spoke to Lucario. However, just as Jiang Ming took out a Piquet ball to try and recall Lucario, who was unconscious and sleeping on the water, Lucario, whose eyes were tightly closed, suddenly opened them. After shaking his head, Lucario was probably worried that Jiang Ming insisted on leaving, so he even grabbed Jiang Ming a little excitedly. A powerful and resounding voice rang out. Because he was worried that Jiang Ming might run into trouble in this small cave, Haklong deliberately made a loud noise in the water to guide Jiang Ming. Therefore, Jiang Ming's statement was merely a notification, not a discussion with Lucario. Although Jiang Ming was drawn back to the Dongting Lake's secret realm because of these trainers, he eventually put them out of his mind and hurriedly entered the cave with his two Pokémon, thinking of the unknown enemy. A stream flows through the middle of this cave while the two sides are formed by rock. The place where Lucario was a stream of water, the current of which was gentle and did not show any strong intention to sweep away people or Pokémon. Are you trying to take me somewhere? This slow drift gave Jiang Ming more time to deal with things. Lucario, who did not voluntarily re-enter the Dongting Lake's secret realm, should logically have no reason to remain there. Roadside, Jiang Ming, completely unaware of why Lucario had stopped there, looked at Lucario with a puzzled expression. Although he had no idea exactly where Lucario had brought him, Jiang Mingshu trusted Lucario. This was an uneven rock wall, almost identical to the walls inside the surrounding caves. At least Jiang Ming didn't see anything useful here. Although he had already gained a lot since entering the Dongting Lake's secret realm, no one would complain about having too much. Lucario then placed another 887 bundles in front. Having lost most of his initial excitement, Jiang Ming went to the spot where Lucario had stopped moving and observed it carefully. Lucario has clearly explored the area and even found a special marker. But Lucario has a special ability, namely Lucario's waveguide. A little greedy, Jiang Ming excitedly retrieved the Hakuryu that was underwater and then continued forward with Lucario. Walk. The cave appears small and cramped from the outside and doesn't seem very big. But after walking for half an hour, seeing Lucario's clear target and its ability to dodge the presence of various Pokémon countless times, Jiang Ming finally couldn't help but ask. After saying that, Jiang Ming had no intention of staying any longer and began to take out lighting equipment. Did you explore this place once before we arrived? Having more is definitely a good thing for Jiang Ming. Following Jiang Ming's lighting prop, Lucario carried Jiang Ming forward quickly. Everything that happened after they were swallowed by the crack and entered this cave was passive. But when Jiang Ming walked in, he could clearly feel that the cave had countless exits, each corresponding to a different place. It turns out that having a Pokémon like Lucario, which can help sense things in advance, really makes many things go much more smoothly. Lucario may even have found something unusual in this marking. After Lucario tried several times in a row, Jiang Ming instantly understood. This waveguide may not necessarily allow Lucario to recognize the path, but it can help Lucario find special things to become its own markers. Lucario never lies to Jiang Ming, and upon hearing Jiang Ming's words, Lucario became somewhat agitated and accused himself. Jiang Ming, who was following Lucario through a maze of twists and turns, didn't initially notice anything amiss. However, Lucario seems to know a great deal about this cave. As soon as Jiang Ming saw Lucario tapping on the wall, he immediately understood that there might be something special on the wall. They continued for nearly an hour, and just when Jiang Ming's legs were about to give out, news came from Li Kaicheng. Lucario seemed to notice Jiang Ming's confusion. Seeing that Jiang Ming had no idea what the wall was for, Lucario quickly tapped on the side. It would be quite difficult to explore the entire area in such a short time. The numerous exits clearly indicate that this cave holds a hidden secret. Realizing that Lucario's reluctance to leave might be due to finding something useful, Jiang Ming clenched his fist and suddenly felt a surge of excitement. This time, neither of them, CCFG, continued to communicate, but both the elf and Jiang Ming clearly knew that the place they were going to was unusual. Although he didn't know the specifics, he quickly realized that there was someone special about Jiang Ming in this place, and he hurriedly began to explore the area under Lucario's guidance. Given the hidden secrets within the cave, Lucario would never be able to clean up this area so easily. Jiang Ming, who couldn't see the problem with the wall with the naked eye, quickly found a button on a rock with Lucario's help. As the button was pressed, the wall, which was originally identical to the rest of the wall, began to crack. The crack didn't last long. A few minutes later, the rock wall completely separated, revealing a small passage inside. Jiang Ming, who was always quite cautious, naturally wouldn't casually enter this small passage. He cautiously took the lighting equipment and groped around the area. After a while, Jiang Ming, who had finally cleaned up, began to look serious. There's nothing special about this little passage and nothing that could harm the trainer, so Jiang Ming could bring the other Pokémon in without much trouble. What made Jiang Ming's expression turn serious was a line of writing left on the wall of the passage. The writing indicates that a spirit named Celebi resides at the end of this passage. If you're a trainer who doesn't know much about Pokémon, you might not even know the name of this Pokémon. But Jiang Ming, who has knowledge of many Pokémon and whose family has many environments where he can come into contact with special Pokémon, is naturally different from other trainers. He had a wealth of knowledge, and with that knowledge he almost easily learned the meaning of the name Shraba. Celebi is a mythical beast that can travel through time and represents time. This mythical beast is not particularly dangerous, but its unique characteristics are absolutely one of a kind. Jiang Ming, who had never heard of any trainer who had ever trained a mythical beast, was somewhat bewildered by this sudden appearance of a mythical beast. However, after a moment of confusion, Jiang Ming resolutely led the elf forward. From the information he gathered, he learned that Celebi was definitely not a fierce elf. Knowing that Celebi was definitely not a bad-natured Pokémon, Jiang Ming wanted to take a gamble. If he were to acquire such a unique Pokémon, his strength and fame would reach new heights. In order to strive for more, Jiang Ming led a group of elves and moved very fast. The passage wasn't particularly long, and Jiang Ming, who moved very quickly, reached the end of it in just 10 minutes. But upon reaching the end, Jiang Ming's expression turned serious. Based on the information he gleaned from the walls of the passageway, there should still be a rabbi here. However, when he led all the elves in, he found the passage empty with no Celebi at the end. Although I knew long ago that it was extremely difficult, if not impossible, to catch a mythical beast in this world. Requesting flowers 0. Jiang Ming was still a little annoyed at being played like that. Not very happy, Jiang Ming looked around and soon saw many stories about the shrines of Srivijaya through the passage. Besides the story of the shrine, there was also a human electronic device left in the passageway of this secret realm. The product is playing a video of Celebhi wandering in this space. Jiang Ming checked the video's recording time and was somewhat helpless to discover that the video was recorded several years ago. In other words, there may indeed be a shrine here, but it is clear that this shrine did not remain here for long. Jiang Ming, realizing with certainty that there might have really been a Celebi here, but that the Celebi hadn't stayed, spread his hands in disappointment. It seems our attempt to find the treasure has failed. Jiang Ming has always been easygoing. Although he really wanted to find a mythical beast, he wouldn't feel sad if he failed to find the treasure. Having determined that the place contained many things left behind by the shrine but no shrine itself, Jiang Ming quickly cleaned up the area. Jiang Ming then led the other elves to leave. Since there are no rabbis here anyway, staying here wouldn't make much sense for him. Jiang Ming, who felt there was no point in staying, led a group of elves toward the exit. Just 1 meter away from the exit, Jiang Ming, who was leading a group of elves toward the exit, suddenly stopped. Although it's usually the Pokémon that fight, that doesn't mean Jiang Ming has no combat experience. At the Elf Academy, not only do elves need to fight, but humans also need to fight. Jiang Ming learned a lot of combat experience from inside the building and from his parents. The combat experience of 530 helped Jiang Ming solve many problems, and naturally it also helped Jiang Ming to anticipate dangers in advance. But now, danger is quietly brewing. Seeing that the exit, which wasn't so dark a moment ago, was now completely dark, Jiang Ming almost immediately realized that there must be someone or something blocking his way there. Although he didn't know why these beings were hiding at the exit waiting to block him, Jiang Ming wasn't stupid. Realizing there was danger at the exit, he and the elf planned to return to the original area to see if there was a new exit. As for embarking on adventures, Jiang Ming has no intention of doing so. The entity at the exit seemed to know that Jiang Ming didn't intend to go out and take risks. Having probably heard Jiang Ming's footsteps stop for a long time, she slowly walked into the passage, having originally planned to wait for Jiang Ming at the exit. Since the other party had come in on their own initiative, Jiang Ming naturally couldn't hide anymore. Not really wanting to confront anyone head-on, Jiang Ming looked seriously at the person who walked in and could only tighten his grip on the piquet ball in his hand, preparing for battle. Just then, the entity that had been slowly entering was finally fully exposed to Jiang Ming. Roar. With a low growl, a familiar Pokémon suddenly charged towards Jiang Ming, unleashing a million-ton punch just before reaching him. The sudden, heavy blow made Jiang Ming realize that if he tried to make contact, he might lose his life. Although he couldn't understand why the elf would suddenly barge in and attack him, Jiang Ming, who had no intention of losing his life, still followed Min's advice and quickly retreated with his elf. As he retreated, Jiang Ming turned his head solemnly to look at the elf, who was extremely displeased with his retreat and was pursuing him. That was a ferocious Nidoking. This Nidoking seemed to be in an unstable state. As Jiang Ming ran with his Pokémon, the Nidoking attacked Jiang Ming's side countless times. Fortunately, Jiang Ming was fast and had quick reflexes, so Nidoking's countless attacks failed to land on him. However, physical strength will eventually run out, and Jiang Ming knew clearly that if he continued to run around here with Nidoking, he would eventually run out of energy. The moment his stamina was exhausted, Jiang Ming was no longer able to attack. To avoid being unable to retaliate, Jiang Ming, who had no idea why a Nidoking had run into the passage and attacked him, exhaled and suddenly threw Lucario out from beside him. Lucario used Fire Punch. Lakai. Lucario gave a very serious shout and then suddenly hurled a fiery dish at Nidoking in front of it. The power of Fire Punch wasn't particularly great. After being hit by Lucario, the Fire Punch's power level dropped to 4.4, and it didn't even want to stop and pay attention to Lucario. Just then, the area where Lucario had hit with Fire Punch suddenly began to feel a burning pain. Nidoking, who had originally intended to ignore Lucario, was suddenly overcome by the searing pain and redirected his anger in the opposite direction. Lucario, sensing that Nidoking had attracted its attention, sped up and ran across the area after Nidoking changed direction. Seeing the sudden flight of Kyrugoan and Leviathan, Duking naturally had no intention of letting these two Pokémon go and quickly tried to launch an attack on them. Having received Jiang Ming's request and with a clear enough view, Gardevoir immediately rushed towards Kirlia's direction. Kirlia's cry was far too weak. Its feeble sound had no effect on Nidoking. Unfortunately, this Nidoking is clearly very different from the Pokémon Jiang Ming has fought before. But Nidoking is different. Nidoking's level is much higher. Jiang Ming, who had finally stopped in an open area, quickly recalled the somewhat tired Lucario and then hurled Kirlia out. Realizing that his Pokémon was no match for Nidoking, Jiang Ming quickly said to Gardevoir, "I might have to trouble you this time." Just as Nidoking's attack was about to land on Kirlia, Flame Arrow rushed to Kirlia's side and knocked Kirlia away. Kirlia, still dazed after being thrown out, shook her head and then quickly used Hypnosis on Nidoking in front of her. Although the Pokémon Jiang Ming had fought before were of a higher level than his own Pokémon, the difference wasn't actually that significant. Because the level difference wasn't too significant, Jiang Ming's Pokémon was fully capable of challenging those Pokémon of higher levels. I don't usually use Gardevoir just so that my Pokémon can get more training. Just as Gardevoir headed towards Kirlia, Jiang Ming quickly brought out Talonflame as well. The Arrowhawk, which was already prepared, let out a cry upon hearing Jiang Ming's words and then quickly rushed towards Kirlia. Nidoking, which was being kited, couldn't let Jiang Ming escape so easily, so it naturally followed Lucario and began to chase after him. Jiang Ming, who had just thrown out Talonflame, looked at Gardevoir running towards Nidoking to cover for him and spoke to Talonflame with a bit of nervousness. He wasn't a pedantic person. The fact that he brought Gardevoir with him was enough to prove that he was willing to use it. The two ran one after the other for nearly half an hour. During this time, Jiang Ming pulled Nidoking from the 10 paths in the cave to the open space. Shan Na. Gardevoir, watching from the side, clearly understood that Jiang Ming did not have the ability to control the power supply. Kirlia, knocked aside by Talonflame, rolled to dodge Nidoking's attack and was then quickly carried into the sky by Talonflame. Arrowhawk is no match for Nidoking, but its speed and ability to fly are still quite useful. However, if it becomes a last resort, Jiang Ming doesn't plan to consider those so-called training methods. Taking advantage of the time Lucario was running around the area with Nidoking, Jiang Ming wouldn't stay obediently in this somewhat cramped area. Because of the significantly higher level, Jiang Ming's Pokémon's attacks began to be greatly reduced. Seeing Kirlia unable to use Hypnosis on Nidoking due to its greatly reduced attack power, Jiang Ming, who hadn't originally planned to use Gardevoir, looked serious. This cry is somewhat similar to Kirlia's cry from earlier, but it is definitely not the same. The place wasn't very big, which meant they would be severely restricted if they stayed here to fight. Lucario is an extremely intelligent Pokémon. As Jiang Ming led his Pokémon out of the passage, Lucario quickly followed suit. To prevent this constraint from persisting, Jiang Ming grabbed the other elves and started running towards the outside of the passage. However, just as Nidoking was about to launch his Poison Needle attack on the two-word sprite, a somewhat alluring voice suddenly rang out. "Bring Kirlia back, 1. Corellian, use Hypnosis." After entangled with Nidoking for a while, Gardevoir, who was not used to face-to-face battles, used Shadow Clone at Jiang Ming's request to escape Nidoking's entanglement first. Sensing the danger posed by Nidoking, Gardevoir silently began to retreat while absorbing the moon's power. This dizziness is different from the dizziness I felt before. Gardevoir, now under Jiang Ming's command, naturally obeyed his orders. Nidoking seemed to be considering creating distance and using other attacks, so he wasn't fixated on capturing Gardevoir. The sudden shout caught Nidoking off guard and quickly left him completely bewildered. Gardevoir was fortunate enough to escape the impact, but Nidoking was not so lucky. The moon also appears in the secret realm. Jiang Ming, who had entered the secret realm during the day, found that by the time they finally emerged from the passage, it was already night. Seeing that Gardevoir had finally mentally prepared itself and was charging directly at Nidoking, Jiang Ming quickly shouted to Gardevoir, "Use Shadow Clone to dodge." The immense power of the moon, unleashed by Gardevoir, surged directly towards Nidoking, forcing Gardevoir to retreat a considerable distance due to the force of the attack. Looking at the moon hanging high above the secret realm, Jiang Ming solemnly addressed Gardevoir, who was still battling Nidoking. Jiang Ming, who couldn't sense how surprised Nidoking was at all, watched as Gardevoir, who had used Charm on Nidoking, looked up at the sky with a slightly tired expression. Several Pokémon that had just been bullied badly by Nidoking quickly launched all their attacks at Nidoking after Jiang Ming threw them out. Okay, although these attacks couldn't do much damage to Nidoking's thick-skinned body, they did effectively prevent Nidoking from getting up again. So just as Nidoking was overturned by the powerful moon's power, Jiang Ming quickly threw out his Pokémon. Taking advantage of the Pokémon Jiang Ming threw out to stop her, Gardevoir quickly used Spellblade on Ketata again. Just as Nidoking was about to rush in front of Gardevoir, Gardevoir suddenly unleashed the power of the moon. By using the method of avoiding Nidoking's entanglement, Gardevoir began to create distance from Nidoking. Gardevoir, who was shouted at by Jiang Ming, obviously saw Nidoking's charge, but at the last moment, Gardevoir did not use Shadow Clone as Jiang Ming had said. Seeing Gardevoir distance itself from him, Nidoking suddenly stood still and glared fiercely at Gardevoir. The power of the moon had already injured Nidoking, and when Gardevoir unleashed its psychic attack, the already injured Nidoking was immediately stunned by Gardevoir's mental attack. But this cry was different. Jiang Ming was never a good person to begin with, and seeing that Nidoking had been overthrown, he naturally wanted to kick him while he was down. Because of Lucario and Nidoking, Jiang Ming spent a long time wandering around this secret realm. The powerful impact completely ripped Nidoking off its skin, which was originally about to continue attacking Gardevoir. Jiang Ming, who had sensed something was wrong with Nidoking from the moment he spoke, suddenly changed his expression and instantly realized that Nidoking had been gathering energy to use Super Impact. Gardevoir used the power of the moon. Just as Gardevoir dodged the impact and Nidoking, extremely displeased, was about to launch another attack, the power of the moon struck Nidoking directly. This distance allowed Gardevoir to avoid Nidoking's sudden Super Impact. Although this dizzy state did not last long, it made Nidoking clearly realize just how much the sound had affected him. Completely surprised that Jiang Ming had a Pokémon that could go toe-to-toe with him, Nidoking looked in Jiang Ming's direction in astonishment. Just as Gardevoir was about to successfully absorb the power, Nidoking, who had been standing firmly in place, suddenly let out a roar and then charged towards Gardevoir. Nidoking, which had no ability to dodge Jiang Ming's Piquet Ball attack, struggled for a while before finally obediently staying inside Jiang Ming's Piquet Ball. Now, after going through so much trouble to beat this elf into this state, it's become quite large. Nidoking is a very high-level Pokémon. Under normal circumstances, Jiang Ming would definitely not have been able to defeat such a Pokémon. However, Nidoran's sudden appearance made Jiang Ming realize that this passage was not so simple. Suddenly realizing someone was watching him closely from behind, Jiang Lu clenched his fists and quickly resumed his search from other directions. Read Jing Shuang's novels at Feilu Novel Network. Unfortunately, this group wasn't very lucky this time. With the appearance of Nidoking and the strange communication device, Jiang Ming was now extremely vigilant about every clue. If he had, Jiang Ming would have already put his elves on guard, and he would never have let his guard down like he did just now. Seacac, could it be that there's something here he hasn't discovered yet, something that's very appealing to the elves? Jiang Ming was so excited that he was able to capture such a high-level Nidoking in the secret realm that he quickly put away the Piquet Ball. Jiang Ming, determined not to lose out, quickly threw the Piquet Ball at the 370 Nidoking. Jiang Ming had already lost interest in the passage and had even planned to leave it with the elf. The prop is still very new. It hasn't been stepped on or left in the same spot for a long time to collect dust. If not, Nidoking shouldn't have appeared. This alertness led Jiang Ming to notice those unusual spots mixed in with the footprints. With a cold expression, he addressed the obviously tired elves around him. Be on your guard, there are already enemies inside. Jiang Ming certainly wouldn't miss this great opportunity. Seeing that Nidoking's massive body was extremely conspicuous on the ground, Jiang Ming quickly took out a specially made Piquet Ball and threw it at Nidoking. Moreover, it's highly likely that another person was still hiding in a corner observing his battle with Nidoking while he was being chased by Nidoking. Then, strangely, he led the other elves back to the previous passage. Using these abrupt points, Jiang Ming stopped outside the passage and calmly looked into the dark passage, quickly confirming one thing. The continuous skill attack severely injured Nidoking, making it impossible for the Pokémon to recover quickly like before. With this prop and the fact that there were no traces of dust, Jiang Ming quickly determined that there was another person nearby. These footprints were difficult to distinguish from Jiang Ming's footprints, and Jiang Ming wouldn't usually bother to identify anything unusual about them. Nidoran, who was unlikely to regain consciousness anytime soon, lay dazed on the ground. Because most of the time Jiang Ming wouldn't easily take risks and he would never normally have such a good advantage as he does now. This search proved quite useful. After Jiang Ming and the other Pokémon searched for a while, Jiang Ming discovered 10 important items in a corner. If you have an idea, then do it. Since you have the idea to explore, there is no need to let it slip away. The group of Pokémon, still somewhat exhausted from defeating Nidoking, let out cries and stared sharply at the passage. Jiang Ming, who was quickly searching with all the elves, found several more imprints near the passage. It was a communication device that had been stepped on and broken. There are quite a few Pokémon living in this area, but none are as powerful as Nidoran's tomb. After all, during the time Jiang Ming came here with Lucario, he had observed the surrounding terrain and the Pokémon that lived there. Knowing for certain that Nidoking could not possibly be a Pokémon living in this area, Jiang Ming began to explore the passage that had attracted Nidoking here. Jiang Ming led a group of elves and quickly began searching the area near the passage. Jiang Ming placed Gardevoir, the strongest among the group of Pokémon, at the very front. Compared to the other somewhat tired Pokémon, Gardevoir is in relatively good condition right now. After being assigned to the front by Jiang Ming, Gardevoir calmly began to move forward. They walked carefully, making some small noises, but it was much better than when they were completely unprepared at the beginning. It was precisely because of this much better condition that the trainers who were discussing things inside obviously did not notice that Pokémon and humans were walking towards the passage. They didn't realize they were giving Jiang Ming a better opportunity. Jiang Ming, who was leading a group of Pokémon and being sandwiched in the middle, kept a close eye on the trainers who were discussing something, intending to extract some useful information from them when they weren't paying attention. "Who is it?" Just as Jiang Ming and his group of elves were listening happily, a voice suddenly came from behind them. Then, footsteps came from outside the passage. An elf was thrown out at the same time the footsteps approached. Jiang Ming's expression changed upon realizing that he had been caught eavesdropping, and he naturally couldn't let the other party launch an attack so casually. He quickly turned around and took out a Pokéball, intending to deal with the opponent's attack directly. However, the other party was clearly a very experienced trainer. Just as Jiang Ming took out the Pokéball, the other person had already set his attack target on Gardevoir. Jiang Ming, who had originally planned to send other Pokémon out to launch an attack, changed his expression when he saw them directly targeting Gardevoir. For Jiang Ming, Gardevoir is a backup plan. Of course, he can use it, but every time he uses it, it must be a key target. After all, no matter how powerful Gardevoir is, it will eventually run out of stamina. Jiang Ming will not waste Gardevoir's stamina on unimportant matters. Unexpectedly, while he didn't intend to exhaust Gardevoir's stamina, the others realized Gardevoir's importance and actually attacked it at this moment. Seeing Gardevoir being harassed, Jiang Ming could only quickly recall all the other Pokémon, his face grim as he ran into the room at the end of the passage from his Pokéball. As soon as he ran into the room, the trainers inside reacted and looked at Jiang Ming warily. Jiang Ming naturally wouldn't try to acquire these people at this time since he didn't yet know their situation. In addition, the incident with King Naito had given Jiang Ming some reason to be suspicious, so if he were to casually express his political intentions towards these people now, it would seem too reckless. Knowing the reason for his current disadvantage, Jiang Ming, not intending to be too reckless, retreated while pointing somewhat helplessly to the passage not far away. "I don't know what happened, but when we were halfway there, a trainer suddenly attacked us and my Pokémon got entangled." The group of trainers who were initially extremely wary of Jiang Ming looked at each other in bewilderment upon hearing his words, unsure whether to believe him or not. Jiang Ming didn't care whether they were alive or dead. Seeing their bewildered expressions, Jiang Ming groped around while smiling and speaking to them. "I had no choice but to run in here. If the trainer who suddenly attacked us is your partner, then please have your partner hold back for now, and we can have a proper talk." While talking and exploring, Jiang Ming quickly followed the trainer's gazes and found another small exit he had found when he first came to this small room. After confirming that there were no problems with the exit, Jiang Ming did not run away immediately. Instead, he shouted to Gardevoir, who was being harassed, "Gardevoir, come back and do it." Seeing Nidoking charging towards them, the trainers widened their eyes and tried to turn and flee. The trainers naturally couldn't let Jiang Ming get away so easily. Just as Jiang Ming began to retreat with Gardevoir, a group of trainers quickly caught up. Fortunately, Jiang Ming was conscious. For those who are unprepared, the lack of space to move around is actually a big problem. They are unable to do much in this space and are forced to be trapped inside. Sano. Unfortunately, they clearly lacked the ability to escape, as Nidoking's group was far faster than them. Upon receiving the command, Gardevoir immediately used Psychic on the trainer and Pokémon in front of it. Jiang Ming, having confirmed Gardevoir's return, wasted no time. He quickly pressed the button to activate the exit. Just as the trainers realized that Jiang Ming had already investigated this small 57 area, Jiang Ming threw the Magikarp's Pokéball out. The group of trainers who had gathered together clearly did not expect that Jiang Ming had actually captured a Nidoking. Seeing the trainers gather together and eagerly chase after him, Jiang Ming smiled, took out his piquet ball and suddenly threw it at the trainers. Therefore, Nidoran could not sustain the battle for very long. After a series of maneuvers, the group of trainers who had posed some threat to Jiang Ming were now completely no longer a threat. Before the trainers could even react, Magikarp suddenly leaped up and unleashed several powerful tail strikes at them. Having less space to move around is both a good thing and a bad thing. Go Nidoking used Super Impact to knock them out. Just as the trainers and Pokémon in front were feeling a bit weak due to Gardevoir's psychic ability, Gardevoir quickly retreated back to Jiang Ming's side and stood firmly in front of him. Inside the Piquet ball, Nidoking only regained some strength. He did not fully recover from his injuries. Jiang Ming was waiting for them to catch up. After the battle ended, 4.8 also fell to the ground without hesitation. Seeing Nidoking lying on the ground after the battle, Jiang Ming quickly recalled Nidoking into its Piquet ball, then released the other Pokémon one by one, tied up all the trainers and searched out all their Piquet balls. Seeing Magikarp still struggling to wag its tail, the trainers were so angry their teeth ached. Small passageway, but this is good news for Jiang Ming because he was prepared. Jiang Ming looked at the group of trainers who were so angry their teeth ached, and then glanced at their slightly swollen faces from being hit by Magikarp. He quickly recalled Magikarp with an extremely serious expression and then led a group of Pokémon to retreat. Nidoking also fainted along with them. Nidoking, who had been attacked by Gardevoir's moon power, had not actually recovered well. The group of trainers who were suddenly slapped in the face by the fishtail widened their eyes, completely unexpected that Jiang Ming, a seemingly normal trainer, could come up with such a trick. Having just been attacked by Magikarp, they couldn't withstand the impact and were knocked unconscious before they could even utter a word. The place they are in now is even narrower than the passageway they just passed through. This small space will limit the activity space for those who come to visit. After being put back into a Piquet ball and recovering for a while, Nidoking let out a cry and suddenly charged forward. The trainers, utterly lacking the ability to escape, could only watch helplessly as Nidoking charged towards them, and then, the sentence is incomplete and ends abruptly. Jiang Ming didn't quite understand why they were so sure that the 603-star Sheila was still there. The moment they opened their eyes, before these trainers could even launch an angry attack on Jiang Ming, they discovered that they were all bound. Seeing the panic on their faces, Jiang Ming nodded thoughtfully, quickly returned to his original seat and spoke helplessly. Compared to Jiang Ming's incomprehension, the group of trainers who were speechless at Jiang Ming's comments quickly came to their senses. Jiang Ming, who had been somewhat intimidated in the fight just moments before, had now become the dominant force. Having just arrived at this place, Jiang Ming only managed to find that there was another passage leading out of the hut, but he didn't find anything else. I don't think I've offended you in any way. The assertive Jiang Ming led a group of Pokémon around and around, making the bound trainers extremely worried before finally speaking with a smile. Was it you who ordered that Nidoking to attack me just now? One of the trainers looked at Jiang Ming with a somewhat unpleasant expression, probably knowing that if he didn't reveal some things, Jiang Ming definitely wouldn't let him off so easily. These words quickly silenced Jiang Ji. However, judging from the trainer's situation, they seemed to have a fairly deep understanding of the cabin. Jiang Ming also knew that a rabbi had appeared in this small house. Jiang Ming, who was determined not to let any good stuff slip away, looked at the group of trainers with a smile and immediately asked the Arrow Temple to give them a fire therapy session. They weren't here to steal his Pokémon and they didn't even know him, yet they still launched this attack on him. Jiang Ming really didn't know what these people were thinking. Upon hearing this, the group of trainers who were already somewhat angry with Jiang Ming immediately looked at each other in disbelief, their faces filled with panic. They clearly hadn't expected Jiang Ming to ask such a question. Jiang Ming doesn't want to get involved in anything good. Not only did they not offend Jiang Ming, they hadn't even seen these people. If they attacked the trainer inside the hut without first investigating the situation simply because of the words outside the passage, wasn't it a bit too reckless? The group of trainers who were suddenly attacked by fire quickly opened their eyes as a result of the fire therapy. Knowing the reason for this, the trainer's expression was unpleasant, but his tone was much better. He spoke to Jiang Ming with some dissatisfaction. In addition, the things these trainers did made Jiang Ming realize that this little house, which he hadn't figured out anything about, was obviously very important. Just as Jiang Ming was making his guesses, the trainer who had spoken seemed to have noticed Jiang Ming's silence and his speculations. "We thought you were here to find a rabbi just like us. If these people were there to steal Magikarp from him, that would be understandable, but judging from their condition after being attacked by Skipjack Magnus, it's clear they weren't particularly interested in Magikarp." Jiang Ming, who had initially tried to run away, suddenly found a place to sit down casually after these trainers proved to be no threat. He decided to stop running and instead planned to ask them some questions once they regained their senses. It's understandable that these people would have such misunderstandings, given that they know this. Is it because of the words outside the passageway? Seeing that Jiang Ming was keeping quiet and speculating because he was unsure about some things, he said helplessly, "The researcher in this room is a good friend of mine. He once told me that he was researching rabbis, but a year after he told me about his research on rabbis, he disappeared. For example, about Nidoking, and for example, about this little house. One of the Pokémon is Celebi, which is said to be able to travel through time and space, while the other Pokémon is Mopa, which is said to be able to travel to various places using a light circle." Jiang Ming was a little angry after saying this. He could be chased by elves because of his mistakes, and he could also be injured because of his mistakes. The researchers, having developed a particular interest, followed the two elves all the way here. It seems that, just as Jiang Ming had guessed, these trainers do indeed know more about this cabin than he does. Such a special elf could not stay in one place forever, and there was actually nothing in this high-level secret realm that could attract two elves. But no one would complain about having too much to gain, and Jiang Ming wouldn't either. For Jiang Ming, having more to gain was definitely a good thing. Thinking that Jiang Ming might not need so-called emotional value at all, but rather something else, the trainer clenched his fist and finally spoke to Jiang Ming seriously. The researcher who suddenly saw such a special elf in a high-level secret realm clearly had something on his mind. Jiang Ming, who was initially a little confused, looked over at the trainer who had spoken and finally understood his doubts from the trainer's words. Compared to the emotional value that can be explained, other values are perhaps what Jiang Ming needs most, since every trainer who enters the secret realm does so in order to obtain more. In order to gain more, Jiang Ming thought for a moment and finally reluctantly sat down in front of the trainer. Those trainers weren't idiots, they could clearly sense Jiang Ming's displeasure from his less-than-friendly tone. Knowing that there is also a Celebi in the secret realm is even more rewarding. Jiang Ming, who was initially extremely displeased, calmly looked at the trainer and quickly realized that the trainer intended to use this information to soothe his emotions. Seeing Jiang Ming's reluctant movement, the trainer breathed a sigh of relief, looked around somewhat dejectedly, and then began to explain the situation in the area. "I have no explanation for Nidoran's attack on you, but I can tell you a lot about what happened inside this hut." Jiang Ming, having confirmed that these trainers also knew that Celebi was not present, let out a sigh of relief and spoke with a hint of displeasure. It has to be said that this approach is indeed very good. Jiang Ming came to the secret realm in order to obtain more things. He was incredibly lucky that time. He saw two special spirits as soon as he entered the Dongting Lake's secret realm. For him, this explanation was meaningless. Jiang Ming felt very uncomfortable about being schemed against by others. "Since this place comes from your friends, you should know that this hut was indeed once home to a shrine, but the shrine is no longer here." Realizing that these trainers knew the cabin better than he did, Jiang Ming pondered for a moment. While the trainers were still staring at him nervously, Jiang Ming asked in confusion. The trainer who spoke first glanced around awkwardly, not intending to explain why he had arranged for multiple attacks on Jiang Ming. The trainer's researcher friend wasn't originally in the Dongting Lake secret realm, since the Dongting Lake secret realm generally doesn't keep outsider dragons. That researcher was initially just one of the trainers who entered the secret realm of Dongting Lake. "Since there's no Celebi here, this place isn't that valuable anymore. You actually sent a wild Nidoking to attack me just because it's not that valuable. You really don't value trainers' lives at all." Therefore, pursued by the researchers, the two elves did not linger there for long and quickly left the Dongting Lake's secret realm. Jiang Ming's words did not surprise the trainers, which proved that they did indeed know that Celebi was not present. Although Jiang Ming had already gained a lot from capturing Nidoking and Skipjack in the secret realm. After the two Pokémon left the Dongting Lake's secret realm, the trainer who was about to reveal some information stopped. However, Jiang Ming is not someone who can be easily fooled. If only two Pokémon had appeared, these trainers would never be so enthusiastic about this place. He smiled and stood up as the trainer in front of him who wasn't going to continue speaking. It seems you're still hiding something. The trainer on the other side wasn't stupid either. He naturally knew that his failure to tell everyone would eventually be exposed. He was just too reluctant to reveal that final message. After all, if he were to actually say it, it would mean he would have one more competitor. However, if he doesn't say it out loud, given 753's current situation, he clearly doesn't have the ability to seize that thing. After weighing the pros and cons, the trainer, who was initially reluctant to reveal certain things, finally looked up at Jiang Ming with a sense of helplessness. When those two elves left this area, my researcher friend, in order to study the situation of these two elves, asked the two song elves to each leave behind their own power. The trainer didn't go into too much detail about how he made the request, but it's clear that the two Pokémon left behind their power and also left behind many good items. Jiang Ming, who initially thought the trainer's concealment was nothing major, became serious upon hearing the trainer's words and learning what the trainer was hiding. After a moment of seriousness, Jiang Ming approached the trainer with a smile. Seeing Jiang Ming's good attitude, the trainer was obviously not foolish enough to think that Jiang Ming's attitude towards him had really changed for the better. Seeing Jiang Ming arrive with a smile, the trainer looked at Jiang Ming with a headache, but in the end he could only mutter, "I learned about the whereabouts of the power left by Hoopa from my friend's message, but I don't know where the power left by Rabbi at the ultimate pressure is for the time being." Having said all that, he clearly knew that there was no way he could hide anything anymore. Therefore, after saying this, the trainer helplessly began to talk about many things he knew. Jiang Ming waited solemnly for a while and soon learned that the power left behind by Hoopa's sea cab was in this hut. There was actually a basement under the cabin where some of the researchers' research was stored. Logically, Hoopa and Celebi's powers should have been kept in the basement, but according to this trainer's understanding, he discovered that since his friend, the unseen bed, Celebi's powers have also disappeared. Trainers who had some vague suspicions in their minds naturally dared not let Hoopa's power remain here. Celebi's power to disappear with his friends is truly unique. No one could have imagined what kind of results Hoopa's power, which was as unique as that of the Silavi, could bring. To prevent this unexpected power from being used by others, the trainer specifically obtained the key to the basement. Now Jiang Ming only needs to follow this trainer to retrieve the power of Hoopa from the basement. Having learned all about Hoopa's power and Celebi's power from this trainer, Jiang Ming looked at the trainer with a serious expression. The trainer, who was being closely watched by Jiang Ming, seemed to know that he could no longer hide his special abilities. Seeing that Jiang Ming was staring intently at him, he dejectedly took out the basement key. Jiang Ming calmly watched him take out the basement key but did not intend to take it. Instead, he asked a question. "What do you want to do with the power you want to use?" Just as Jiang Ming turned to leave, Nidoking, which Jiang Ming had put back into its Pokéball, suddenly became restless and kept fidgeting inside the Pokéball. At first, Jiang Ming really wanted to take this power to his mother since he didn't know how to use it, but Shen Fei, a big shot in the scientific research circle, definitely knew how to use it. But if this power is left to the trainer, perhaps he really can bring his friend back. But in reality, they could still sense the goodwill that Jiang Ming was showing. Jiang Ming clearly sensed the trainer's cautiousness as he gripped the Pokéball in his hand as if about to ingest something. Seemingly not expecting Jiang Ming to actually accuse them first, the group of trainers, who were initially worried about what trouble Jiang Ming might cause, exchanged glances and then spoke with speechless expressions. Requesting flowers just as he had expected, he heard this news. Jiang Ming pondered for a moment and finally nodded helplessly. The trainer seemed surprised that Jiang Ming would ask such a question. If he were to take this power away, it could contribute to the scientific research community, but it might not necessarily yield any significant results in the short term. However, after considering the trainer's situation, even though he knew this power would be extremely useful to Shen Fei, Jiang Ming reluctantly swallowed the news. Seeing Jiang Ming's current situation, a group of trainers cautiously looked towards him, feeling somewhat nervous. Are you hiding something? To be honest, even if that power were left to me, it wouldn't be of much use since I don't need it. These people could sense his goodwill, so Jiang Ming ignored them. After confirming that these people were indeed alright, Jiang Ming then untied them. If he could deliver this power to Shen, it would be of immense help to Shen Fei. It's still a life, after all. Jiang Ming wouldn't let his greed make him disregard a life. I'm planning to find my friend. Upon seeing the other party begin heading towards the basement, Jiang Ming casually took his elf and tried to leave. Given the situation, what else can we hide? Seeing Jiang Ming looking at him calmly, he remained silent for a moment and finally spoke with a hint of helplessness. Jiang Ming, who had no intention of ignoring other people's fate, looked at the trainer in front of him with a solemn expression. If what you say is true and you intend to use this power to rescue your friend, I am willing to give up taking this power. Jiang Ming watched in silence as they opened the basement passage. Although he was somewhat tempted, he was a man of his word. Jiang Ming was actually able to tell which matter was more important than the other. After a while, he lowered his head dejectedly and expressed some gratitude to Jiang Ming. When he said those words, Jiang Ming had already guessed that his desire to take Hoopa's power might be because of his friend. Upon hearing Jiang Ming's words, the trainer, who was somewhat taken aback, opened his mouth in surprise. Jiang Ming's answer clearly took the trainer by surprise. The group of trainers, who were already wary of what other tricks Jiang Ming might have up his sleeve, noticed the restlessness of the Poké ball in Jiang Ming's hand almost immediately. Even the other trainers behind the trainer couldn't help but thank Jiang Ming when they saw this. Knowing that Jiang Ming didn't need their thanks, they stopped talking after saying those words and turned around to open the underground passage right in front of Jiang Ming. The group of trainers, now freed from their restraints, thanked Jiang Ming repeatedly. Although they had just been at odds and even used some rather unusual methods to prevent Jiang Ming from discovering some things inside the cabin. That makes sense? Although Jiang Ming didn't know what Nidoking was raging about, he knew that the trainers really had nothing left to hide. Seeing that the trainer was uneasy because of the Poké ball in his hand, Jiang Ming casually put the Poké ball away and waved to the trainers. Don't worry, I mean what I say. Since I don't intend to compete with you for that power, I won't make a move. As he spoke, Jiang Ming glanced at the still restless 013 Poké ball, then turned to the trainer in front of him with a hint of helplessness. As for the Poké ball, you don't need to worry about it. It's very likely that it sensed something was wrong and that's why it. Jiang Ming didn't finish his sentence. Halfway through, he suddenly realized something was wrong and quickly ran towards the basement. Those trainers clearly didn't have Jiang Ming's reaction speed. Seeing Jiang Ming's sudden movement, they thought he was trying to take it from them. The group of trainers, who were not necessarily able to defeat Jiang Ming, looked serious. Just as they were preparing to face a formidable opponent, Jiang Ming, who had quickly entered the basement, stopped and looked up at them. There are still people underground. The group of trainers, who had initially thought Jiang Ming was trying to steal their items, widened their eyes and stared at Jiang Ming in astonishment. Jiang Ming, who could see how surprised these trainers were, calmly looked around before speaking directly to the trainer in front of him with a cold face. Besides me, there's a good chance that someone else has discovered the secret here. You'd better be careful. After saying this, Jiang Ming began to cautiously observe his surroundings. The opponent's concealment methods were actually very strong, and because of this, if Nidoking hadn't been so anxious, Jiang Ming wouldn't have noticed that something was wrong. However, after discovering this, Jiang Ming's side did not intend to let those people off easily, except to show them that they were harmless. They are currently in the hidden realm of Dongting Lake, where any trainer who doesn't appear harmless may launch an attack on other trainers. Because in the secret realm, each of them is a competitor. To avoid direct attacks from competitors, Jiang Ming acted with extreme caution. While Jiang Ming was being cautious, the group of people hiding in the shadows were not stupid either, and naturally they could see that Jiang Ming had discovered them. Realizing they could no longer hide, the group of trainers exchanged glances before stepping out. Jiang Ming let out a breath of stale air as he saw them come out. The group of trainers who had been wary of Jiang Ming just moments before suddenly panicked and rushed to Jiang Ming's side when they saw the group of people walking out. They hadn't expected things to actually turn out exactly as Jiang Ming had described. Now that they have discovered it, they will not be foolish enough to still regard Jiang Ming as their enemy at this time. Regardless of what Jiang Ming was really thinking, at least this time his attitude towards them was normal, and he did indeed tell them that there were new enemies. The group of trainers who had confirmed the matter quietly followed Jiang Ming, keeping a close eye on the trainers who came out in front. The staring contest didn't last long. The group of trainers Jiang Ming had spotted clearly knew they needed to strike first, so they stopped talking and rushed towards the place where Hoopa Power was located not far away. The group of trainers, who initially had no idea why these trainers were hiding here, instantly realized that this was another group of enemies who had come to steal their power. Having finally persuaded Jiang Ming, they naturally wouldn't let this power be snatched away by other beings so easily. Excitedly, they also began to move towards the direction of the lotus position to seize power. The trainers in front clearly hadn't expected a Nidoking to appear at this moment. Seeing the Nidoking charging towards them, the trainers' faces changed and they quickly began to dodge. The result of the fight was not good because the two sides were evenly matched, so neither side could gain the upper hand. Upholding justice in advanced secret realms requires absolute power, and they did not believe that such a young child could possibly uphold justice in front of them. They then looked up at Jiang Ming seriously. "We know this group. We temporarily teamed up with them when we entered the secret realm before. They are a group of ruthless and discerning merchants." Hearing his explanation, the group of trainers scoffed. "Once we enter the secret realm, we're all competitors. Do you expect him to uphold justice for what we've done?" Watching the two sides begin to vie for power, Jiang Ming thoughtfully started walking towards the direction of Hoopa's power, somewhat eager to join in. Knowing full well just how powerful Nidoking's aggression was, the trainers dodged while resentfully urging Jiang Ming to recall Nidoking immediately. Nidoking had been restless and uneasy since earlier, and now, seeing Nidoking's sudden appearance, Jiang Ming's expression changed drastically. He was about to say something when he saw Nidoking suddenly appear. Knowing that Jiang Ming was relatively kind, he coldly began to recount all the heinous acts committed by the trainers ahead. The trainers he revealed everything to were clearly wicked and openly honest. After all, this power attracted far too many people, and he was very curious about what this power could be used to attract so many people. Just as Jiang Ming was trying to control Nidoking and ask it why it was in this state, Nidoking, whose expression changed drastically, suddenly began to charge forward. Just as Jiang Ming was about to tell the trainers around him that he didn't intend to help uphold justice, Nidoking, which had been inside Jiang Ming's piquet ball, suddenly appeared. Jiang Ming, who was still itching to make a move, raised an eyebrow and looked at the trainer who was speaking. Despite their clamor, Jiang Ming calmly observed Nidoking's attack direction. After confirming that Nidoking was only attacking one of the trainers, Jiang Ming composed himself and coldly addressed that trainer. "My spirit seems to harbor a lot of resentment towards you and has been chasing and attacking you. So what did you do to my spirit before? Once you encounter a spirit of this level, you'll almost never forget it." Just as Jiang Ming was getting a little restless, the group of trainers who had just reached a reconciliation with Jiang Ming had already fought their turn with the other side. The trainer seems to have discovered that Jiang Ming has a lot of kind-hearted qualities. Because they came here to seek greater benefits, no one would casually uphold justice, not even Jiang Ming was interested in it. The trainer who was practicing was stunned for a moment, clearly not expecting Jiang Ming to ask such a question. Perhaps realizing they couldn't do anything to the other party, the Chen family members who had just reached a reconciliation with Jiang Ming came directly to Jiang Ming's side. The trainer who remembered Nidoking looked around and after confirming that Nidoking had indeed been chasing and attacking him, said somewhat angrily, "I just accidentally destroyed its home. It was precisely because they didn't see it that way that they weren't interested in the trainer's interactions with Jiang Ming, but instead continued to watch Hoopa's power intently. After all, a high-level Nidoking is definitely powerful enough, and even though this Nidoking is injured, its attack power will still be very strong. Jiang Ming, who felt ignored by those people, actually agreed with what they said. After all, as they said, every trainer who entered the secret realm was only there to seek greater benefits. However, he clearly still remembered Nidoking's words. After all, Nidoking's current level is indeed not low. He just stumbled into this matter by accident. He casually stepped back and waved to the two sides vying for power. You fight your battle, I won't interfere, and I certainly won't try to take this power from you. There was a box on the research table. Wang Mahao, this sudden appearance of the elf was indeed a bit unexpected for Jiang Ming. With this feeling in mind, Jiang Ming turned his gaze to Fatty Ding, who was cautiously making his way through the political arena. Jigglypuff cautiously made its way forward across the research table. It's obvious that no one wants to believe his words. After all, Nidoking is still chasing after Nolly Trainer and beating him up. However, as they fought for a while, Jiang Ming continued to quietly watch the show with his group of Pokémon. The trainers, who initially didn't trust Jiang Ming, gradually realized that he really didn't intend to get involved. That was a chubby tent holding a twig. Jiang Ming knew they wouldn't believe him so easily, and seeing them fall silent because of his words, he spoke up speechlessly. This power, which cannot be opened at will, is currently being fought over by a group of people. After uttering that statement, Jiang Ming wasted no more time and immediately took his Pokémon and hid far away to observe the battle. A note was attached to the box, clearly stating that the contents of the box contained a power stored in a special way and should not be opened casually. Without attracting anyone's attention, Fatty looked around warily, then smoothly picked up the box on the competition stage. The group of trainers, suddenly realizing this, exchanged glances, their eyes instantly sharpening as they fixed their gazes on their enemy. He spoke casually, but after hearing his words, Jiang Ming understood why Nidoking was chasing and beating him up so relentlessly. Completely unnoticed, Fatty slithered across the ground a short distance without incident, then quickly ran towards the exit. At first, the group of trainers were not very willing to believe Jiang Ming and were wary of him. They clearly distrusted Jiang Ming's actions of keeping his distance. As for the Pokémon and that trainer, I can't control that. He demolished someone's house, so I can't find a reason not to get beaten up. The place where Nidoking lives is like Nidoking's home. With these emotions swirling in their hearts, the battle between the two trainers intensified over time. Instead of wasting time paying attention to Jiang Ming, we should focus on how to eliminate the enemy. Jiang Ming never interferes with people who deserve to be beaten. If you demolish someone's house, it would be a problem if you didn't get chased and beaten up. Because Jigglypuff wasn't particularly large and the battle between the two sides was quite intense, it was incredibly lucky that it wasn't discovered by the trainers while running away with the box. Jiang Ming, who was watching the battle from the sidelines, couldn't help but look at a place that looked like a research platform not far away. Because of the loud fighting noises around them, Jigglypuff's cautious advance didn't attract anyone's attention. Since Jiang Ming doesn't intend to get involved, there's no need for them to pay any more attention to him. Anyone with eyes who witnessed Nidoran's actions would not readily believe Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming, who had witnessed the whole thing, twitched the corner of his mouth as he watched Jigglypuff run away after grabbing the box, and the group of trainers who were still fighting fiercely without realizing that something was wrong. He really didn't expect that in the end this power would fall on Jigglypuff. Just as Jiang Ming was staring intently at the box with curiosity, a ghostly elf suddenly appeared on the research table. Jiang Ming was actually quite curious about who would ultimately benefit from this power. By the time everyone noticed the elf's presence, it had already completely escaped the basement. The group of people who were fighting fiercely were all hoping that this power would fall into their hands, but when they turned around, they saw that Fatty had run away with the box. The trainers, who never expected that a Jigglypuff would suddenly appear and take the box away, were utterly devastated. How did a Jigglypuff end up here? Could there be other trainers hiding in the shadows? If there really were someone else hiding in the shadows, we should have been able to find them. A group of trainers started whispering amongst themselves, looking somewhat exasperated. Jiang Ming, who had been watching the whole thing, didn't say anything while they were whispering. He simply took the opportunity to recall the somewhat exhausted Nidoking into its Poké ball and then tried to leave. Faced with such a sudden and drastic change, none of the trainers wanted to let the other trainers leave so easily. For them, every trainer who leaves has the potential to become Jigglypuff's trainer. Upon seeing Jiang Ming's actions, they almost immediately turned their attention to him. Knowing perfectly well that these people clearly suspected him of being Jigglypuff's trainer, Jiang Ming glanced at them indifferently. Just as these people were about to approach him, Jiang Ming calmly and casually said, "Instead of wasting time doubting me, why don't you hurry up and find that spirit? Perhaps you still have a chance to capture it. Then, no matter whose spirit it is, as long as you capture it, won't everything that the spirit possesses be in your hands?" One sentence was a wake-up call for a group of trainers who were initially wary of each other. I was initially wondering if some trainer had instructed Jigglypuff to do this. Now, after Jiang Ming's words, they no longer cared about who was in charge. Their focus was on getting the items back from Fatty Ding. To prevent Jigglypuff from running too fast, the group of trainers trying to snatch the items back from Jigglypuff almost without hesitation threw out their fastest Pokémon to give chase. However, in a short period of time, this once lively basement gradually became desolate as the trainers left one after another. Jiang Ming, who had originally planned to leave, was no longer in a hurry when he saw how they were scrambling to leave. Instead, he leisurely led his elf out of the basement. As soon as Jiang Ming stepped outside, he saw a chaotic scene. In addition to the trainers they had just met, there were other trainers who seemed to have heard the news and had come over to join in the fun. However, both those who were just there for the fun and the trainers from before quickly learned that the box had been taken away by Jigglypuff. The trainers, who never expected Jigglypuff to be the ultimate winner, were naturally unwilling to accept it. So when Jiang Ming came out of the basement, none of the trainers in the chaotic scene paid any attention to him. They muttered amongst themselves as they began searching the surrounding area for Fatty. Jiang Ming looked around to make sure that no one was paying attention to him, then smiled and spoke to Gardevoir beside him. "Let's go! After leaving the secret realm, we'll take a car straight home." Gardevoir naturally agreed with Jiang Ming's statement. After all, Jiang Ming had just recently snagged a shiny Magikarp. Currently, other trainers aren't focusing their attention on Jiang Ming because there are better items available. However, if Jiang Ming stays here too long, other trainers who realize the situation will continue to try and steal more shiny Magikarp from him. Since they've already gained quite a bit from this secret realm, there's no need to take this risk now. Jiang Ming, who had no intention of taking any risks, followed the flow of people and left the area, then led his Pokémon toward the exit. The exit is not open yet since the Dongting Lake secret realm only opens once an hour. However, since this time it wasn't as dangerous as the last time, Jiang Ming wasn't worried at all, even though the exit wasn't open yet. He leisurely led a group of elves to the exit and stopped, intending to wait patiently. To Jiang Ming's surprise, just as he and a group of elves were leisurely standing at the exit looking ahead, a familiar elf slowly crawled out from the corner. Jiang Ming initially wanted to back away when he saw the elf suddenly crawl out. But after seeing the box in the elf's hand, Jiang Ming, who had been trying to back away, fell silent. He truly hadn't expected that, despite being chased by so many people, Fatty Ding would still be able to run to the vicinity of the exit with the box. Seeing Fatty Ding swaggering around near the exit with the box in his arms, Jiang Ming's eyelids twitched repeatedly, a sense of urgency stirring within him. Although he had already told those trainers that he didn't intend to compete with them for power, that was simply because Jiang Ming's power might be more useful to those trainers compared to others. Moreover, Jiang Ming has gained so many benefits, so there's no need for him to keep all of them for himself. But now it's different. Seeing this benefit within reach, something no normal person would willingly relinquish with a simple action. Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Jiang Ming was naturally unwilling to accept this. Although Jiang Ming was unwilling to give up and said he wanted to leave and did not intend to continue searching in the Dongting Lake secret realm, he still quickly placed Gardevoir in front of it after seeing Jigglypuff's actions. Jigglypuff, whose path was blocked by Gardevoir, looked up blankly, seemingly not expecting to be captured by its trainer. Seeing the Gardevoir suddenly appear and the several Pokémon that Jiang Ming threw out afterward, Jigglypuff, knowing that it might not be able to escape, paused for a moment. Just when Jiang Ming thought that Fatty Ding might fight back desperately or even hold onto the box tightly, Fatty Ding, after hesitating for a moment, suddenly raised his hand and handed the box to Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming, who was already prepared for a possible big battle with Fatty Ding, was stunned. The other Pokémon who came with Jiang Ming were also stunned. Lucario tilted its head in confusion, looking in Jigglypuff's direction. It didn't quite understand why this Pokémon would willingly give up the power it had worked so hard to obtain. Luca, please give me flowers. It tilted its head and poked Jigglypuff with its paw. The chubby boy who had been poked hopped and skipped to the side, then handed the box back to Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming realized from the repeated actions that Fatty Ding was genuinely willing to give him the box. Jiang Ming, who had no idea why Fatty Ding was willing to give him the things, hesitated for a moment but did not intend to refuse. Point 0. He quickly put the box away. After finishing collecting the items, Jiang Ming looked at Fatty Ding, who was trying to leave, with a serious expression and spoke directly. You took this monkey with you, so I'm not really comfortable giving it to you like this. Let's make a deal. Do you have anything you want that I can trade with you? Although what Jiang Ming offered in the trade was certainly not as valuable as the box, at least he gave Fatty something, which was much better than giving him nothing at all. Just as Jiang Ming was thinking, Fatty Ding, who was about to leave, suddenly stopped, clearly having understood Jiang Ming's words. As soon as he understood, Fatty excitedly opened his mouth and sang a short note, then waved the branch in his hand. Having learned about Pang Ding's passion for singing, Jiang Ming quickly realized that Pang Ding likely wanted a microphone. The other trainers weren't stupid either. Seeing his angry departure, they knew that while he might not attack Jiang Ming in the hall, he would definitely not let Jiang Ming off easily. Just as Fatty Ding hesitated and looked at Jiang Ming nodded and began walking towards the exit that was about to open, waving to Fatty Ding as he did so. Realizing that those people were likely planning to stake out Jiang Ming, the other trainers pondered the situation and naturally weren't willing to let such a great opportunity slip by. With this decision in mind, Jiang Ming hurriedly led Fatty Ding out of the secret realm. If Jigglypuff hadn't given him those items, Jiang Ming definitely wouldn't have bothered with the Pokémon's life or death. Jiang Ming, who wasn't ready to abandon his conscience yet, hesitated for a moment, then suddenly reached out and scooped up the chubby dog that was happily waving its paws. Jiang Ming, who was impressed by Jigglypuff's enthusiastic response, glanced at the trainers who were rushing over and hesitated as he was about to leave. This kind of ordinary thing was quite easy for Jiang Ming to obtain. When he learned that Fatty Ding only needed a microphone, Jiang Ming immediately nodded. Fatty, who had been pulled out of the water, looked at Jiang Ming with a puzzled expression, but probably because Jiang Ming had just mentioned that they were going to make a deal, Fatty still felt a bit of trust in Jiang Ming. Having no other choice, he could only take the elf and leave the secret realm first, and then find a way to send it back to the secret realm later. Fatty Ding, who had been worried that Jiang Ming might not understand his movements, suddenly brightened up and nodded excitedly, starting to wave the 653, a type of Huxia slang term for a specific type of stick or branch, and shout, "Fatty Ding!" Watching him leisurely and effortlessly grasp such a powerful force in his hand, the group of trainers gritted their teeth in hatred. With that faint shred of trust, Fatty Ding hesitated and tilted his head to look at Jiang Ming. They exchanged furious glances. The other trainers, already annoyed that Jiang Ming had stolen the shiny Magikarp, finally clenched their fists. No way, he got way too much from the Dongting Lake's secret realm. It's one thing he got the special shiny Magikarp, but now he's even got the box supposedly containing the power of a mythical Pokémon. I'm not having it. The Chen family members who had chased after him all had red eyes when they saw Fatty Ding being rescued by Jiang Ming. The trainer, extremely unwilling to accept this, angrily left the Dongting Lake's secret realm after saying this. But anyway, Jigglypuff had already given him the box. Wait here for me, I'll go out and buy it for you. The trainers have already located Jigglypuff, and they will definitely try their best to find out the location of the box from Jigglypuff. Jiang Ming, who had just left the secret realm, sensed someone following him. He didn't say anything but instead carried Fatty Ding to a nearby microphone shop and bought Fatty Ding a microphone. Jiang Ming, who was being stared at with his head tilted to the side, coughed and quickly grabbed the chubby Pokémon and left the secret realm. After all, leaving the Pokémon in the secret realm would definitely cause some problems. Having finally acquired a handy tool, Fatty Ding clearly didn't care that Jiang Ming had brought him out of the Dongting Lake's secret realm. Jiang Ming, who had no intention of letting Jigglypuff sing a song there, sighed and casually led Jigglypuff to a secluded spot to observe the trainers chasing after them from the secret realm. They are very likely planning to stake out Jiang Ming and then strike him on his way home after leaving the hall. Driven by their unwillingness to give up, they excitedly headed out of the secret realm. It gripped the microphone in its hand with a hint of delight, its only thought being to sing a song once it had the right tool. They thought Jiang Ming really had no intention of seizing this power, just as he said, but they never expected that he would be the winner in the end. In this situation, if he leaves Jigglypuff behind, it's highly likely that Jigglypuff will be killed by other trainers before he can retrieve the item. While he was observing, the trainers who had hurriedly chased after him were also watching him. The moment they locked eyes, Jiang Ming knew that the group of trainers wouldn't let him off easily. The moment he steps out of the hall, countless trainers will chase after him and attack him. Having clarified his goal, Jiang Ming looked seriously in the direction of the trainers, naturally unwilling to stay put obediently. He's already taken most of what he needed, so there's not much point in him staying any longer. He already has most of the rare items in the Dongting Lake's secret realm. Instead of staying here, we'd be better off going home and studying the things we recently retrieved from the hidden gem of Dongting Lake. In order to return home and conduct his research, Jiang Ming also needed to find a way to deal with these covetous trainers. Having made up his mind, Jiang Ming clenched his fist. Just as Fatty Ding was itching to sing into the microphone, Jiang Ming suddenly emerged from the corner and swaggered out of the hall. The trainers who had been watching Jiang Ming narrowed their eyes. Seeing Jiang Ming walk outside, they naturally couldn't let him go so easily, so they quickly chased after him. Having already guessed that this group of people would definitely chase after him, Jiang Ming suddenly threw the Chi Duo he was holding out the moment he stepped out of the hall. Nidoking, which was thrown out, still had wounds, but it probably understood that this was a life-or-death moment and that Jiang Ming, the trainer, was facing a greater crisis. So even though he was still seriously injured, Nidoking went into battle almost immediately. At the same moment that the trainers chased after him, Nidoking suddenly charged towards them. Taking this opportunity, Jiang Ming hurriedly led Jigglypuff and Gardevoir to a secluded corner. Nidoking didn't linger there with those trainers for too long, since their target was Jiang Ming and they would definitely not show any mercy to Jiang Ming's Pokémon. Seeing that Jiang Ming had gained a good amount of time and was sprinting towards the corner, Nidoking, who had caught the group of trainers off guard, had no intention of staying here. After the battle, it turned around and started running with Jiang Ming. In contrast, Nidoking reacted quickly and started running towards Jiang Ming. The group of trainers who chased after him obviously did not expect to be attacked by Nidoking as soon as they came out. The sudden attack slowed down the trainers who were about to attack Jiang Ming, while the trainers passing by were clearly unaware of the situation. Seeing that some people had started fighting as soon as they left the hall, the trainers were terrified, and some of the weaker trainers instantly panicked. The group of trainers who were chasing Jiang Ming, who were already caught off guard by Nidoking's attack, had no initiative in the chaos. In the end, they could only watch helplessly as Nidoking finished its battle and ran directly towards Jiang Ming, only to be caught in a Piquet ball by Jiang Ming halfway there. The group of trainers were furious at Jiang Ming's cunning and treacherous nature, and one of them snorted coldly. "That's all the tricks this kid can pull. Once this chaos is over, we'll continue our pursuit. As long as our Pokémon are fast enough, we'll definitely catch up." If someone said something like that under normal circumstances, no trainer would respond. Unfortunately, Jiang Ming has too many interests in his hands this time. He's really unwilling to give up if things don't go his way. Knowing that Jiang Ming was still training, Gardevoir nodded firmly to Jiang Ming, not intending to interfere in his affairs at this time. The trainers who were about to approach Jiang Ming didn't take the Jigglypuff's excited singing seriously. After all, the fact that Jigglypuff had secretly taken away the box containing the power of the mythical beasts, damn, it made them grit their teeth. If an ordinary trainer encountered this situation where there was no chance of winning, they would probably just accept defeat. If forced into a corner, Jiang Ming would have Gardevoir directly attack the trainers. If a real fight breaks out, the opponent has a numerical advantage and can definitely use that to suppress him. In addition, the opponent's Pokémon are in pretty good condition, so Jiang Ming's side doesn't really have much of a chance of winning. Fatty Ding clearly understood what Jiang Ming was saying. Gardevoir looked up at Jiang Ming. Gardevoir. He knew perfectly well that those people would definitely use their faster Pokémon to track him down, while his Pokémon had all been in battle and were quite tired. Jiang Ming, who had run a distance with Jigglypuff and Gardevoir, did not run too far. The chubby boy who had been thrown out turned to look at Jiang Ming in confusion. Just then, Jiang Ming spoke up. "Now's the time to show off your singing voice, sing your heart out." Jiang Ming breathed a sigh of relief after receiving a response, then looked at the trainers who were about to approach him with an excited expression and spoke directly. But Jiang Ming was never a trainer who would easily admit defeat. If he had really admitted defeat, he wouldn't have run out of the hall just now, but would have been sitting quietly in the hall thinking about the calendar. Jiang Ming, who clearly sensed Gardevoir's movements, smiled as he looked ahead, very satisfied with Gardevoir's extremely trusting attitude towards him. Extremely satisfied, he suddenly threw the chubby boy who was holding the microphone and singing slowly out of the room. Jiang Ming has never been a rigid person. Since he brought Gardevoir here and hoped that Gardevoir would cover for him, he wouldn't make any mistakes that prevented Gardevoir from conserving its strength. Fatty Ding, who hadn't yet understood the meaning behind Jiang Ming's action, suddenly brightened up, excitedly turned around, grabbed the microphone and started singing. Outside the hall there were many buses picking up and dropping off trainers. Because the trainers had entered the Dongting Lake secret realm one after another, there were not many people in these buses. The trainers, unwilling to lose any benefits because of Jigglypuff, completely ignored it and immediately took out Piquet balls in midair, ready to battle Jiang Ming. "If Jigglypuff's lullaby doesn't work, then we might have to trouble you next." Jiang Ming hurriedly ran towards the car and looked around. Seeing that the trainers had recovered from the chaos and were chasing after him, Jiang Ming, who had already made up his mind, stopped and spoke firmly to Gardevoir. "Next, I'll have Fatty sing a lullaby to hypnotize them. Letter 3005, letter 3005, 1. Now that he's escaped, he'll try to break through even a seemingly hopeless situation." Feeling unwilling to give up, the group of trainers hesitated for a moment before finally nodding and each bringing out their fastest Pokémon. But all of their goals were very clear. They were not there for revenge or to do anything malicious. They were simply there to steal good things. Gardevoir clearly knew that Jiang Ming was testing its limits and that once those limits were reached, Jiang Ming would make it take action. Jiang Ming, convinced that he could make a name for himself, led the chubby boy who had already begun to sing softly and quickly ran towards the nearby car. If we focus our attention on Fatty because of what he did before, then they have already gained tremendous benefits from this. The Pokémon, already afflicted with negative buffs, could only watch helplessly as Gardevoir attacked them. One of the trainers felt a sudden pang of panic when he saw Jiang Ming's smiling demeanor. Unfortunately, their idea ultimately failed to materialize because just as they took out the Piquet balls and before they could release their Pokémon, the lullaby of the Jigglypuff that Jiang Ming had thrown out began to take effect. The group of trainers who were somewhat experienced realized, as Jiang Ming made his move, that they had fallen into his trap. Just as the trainers were still shouting and trying to have a friendly conversation with Jiang Ming, Gardevoir's attack landed on them, knocking all the trainers to the ground. A group of trainers who had also been hit by some negative buffs were still trying to struggle, but unfortunately they clearly lacked the ability to do so. "Thanks, Gardevoir, you've bought me more time." Their idea was good. In their eyes, Jiang Ming was just a trainer and no matter how many Pokémon he had, they couldn't match the number of Pokémon they had. So after struggling for a short while, it was completely wiped out by Gardevoir's powerful attack. "Didn't you guys strike first? You didn't care about anything else, so why should I?" Gardevoir's powerful attack charged towards the trainers. Jiang Ming, who had been standing quietly behind Gardevoir watching it defeat the trainers with a powerful attack, exhaled a breath of oil and then nodded happily at Gardevoir. CCFF to them, Jigglypuff was just a sprite that liked to sing and didn't seem to have much ability. Just as the group of trainers were starting to panic because of Jiang Ming's action, Jiang Ming spoke up in a particularly calm manner. But at that time, they hadn't even considered the possibility of Jigglypuff. Unfortunately, their underestimation led to this spirit, which certainly wouldn't have caused them any harm, actually hypnotizing their spirit right under their noses. If it were the initial situation, those trainers might have been able to escape, since they had already anticipated the possibility of Jiang Ming retaliating when they launched their attack. Completely unaware of what had happened to their Pokémon, the trainers nervously looked down at their flying Pokémon trying to steady themselves. Just then, Jiang Ming suddenly smiled and stepped back. As soon as Jiang Ming finished speaking, Gardevoir launched an attack on the trainer in front of it. He looked at Jiang Ming with a panic, then at the trainers around him who were fleeing in panic because of the fight they had started, and finally couldn't help but say to Jiang Ming, "If you make a move here, it is very likely to affect the other trainers. This elf certainly won't bring them any bad influence." In addition, since Jiang Ming's previous Pokémon had already fought in the secret realm, the already limited number of Pokémon was likely in poor condition. All these unfavorable circumstances put Jiang Ming in a very passive position, while their proactive attack would surely bring Jiang Ming down to their hands, forcing him to obediently hand over all the good stuff. The flying Pokémon suddenly began to wobble, and the group of trainers on its backs changed their expressions drastically, never expecting that their Pokémon would do such a thing after only one encounter. Having already guessed what they would say, Jiang Ming calmly stepped back behind Gardevoir. So, as they approached Jiang Ming, they already planned to command their Pokémon. Those trainers who were knocked to the ground by Gardevoir's attack didn't even last a few seconds before they were completely knocked unconscious by the powerful attack. The group of elves, who were feeling dizzy and sleepy because of Jigglypuff's singing, had no ability to resist the sudden attack, nor did they have the sharpness to dodge it at that moment. However, Jiang Ming was no ordinary trainer. Jiang Ming, who couldn't afford to waste any time, naturally didn't have much time to find out what Fatty Ding was thinking. These trainers have indeed fainted, but they are not dead. If Jiang Jin were to stand here calmly discussing matters while they were unconscious, he would only miss a great opportunity to resolve the situation. It's a bit dangerous outside right now, so it's not suitable for you to play around. I'll send you back to the secret realm first. Fortunately, Jigglypuff didn't seem to be struggling. When it heard Jiang Ming say that he was going to send it back, the elf, which had been happily holding the microphone, began to look ahead calmly, as if waiting for Jiang Ming to send it back to its familiar environment. It was obvious to all the staff in the hall that Jiang Ming had just rushed out of the secret realm with a large group of trainers chasing him. Seeing Jiang Ming return with Jigglypuff and place it in front of them, the staff who had taken over Jigglypuff hesitated for a moment before glancing at Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming, who was worried that his behavior would upset Fatty Ding, didn't waste any words and quickly led Fatty Ding to the outside of the Dongting Lake's secret realm. Regardless of the gesture, it was as if they were telling Jiang Ming that he didn't need to thank them at all because this matter was insignificant. "I'm sorry, I'm in a hurry. I need to leave as soon as I can after I've dealt with this Pokémon. I hope it will be done quickly." He stopped wasting his breath on Gardevoir, and after confirming that Gardevoir was alright and that the trainers were completely unconscious, Jiang Ming quickly ran towards Jigglypuff, which was still singing. He hesitated, trying to help Jiang Ming with his affairs while attempting to understand the situation from Jiang Ming. After all, the initiative is now in their hands. The key is whether they are willing to speed up. The opinions of other trainers don't matter. After saying this, Jiang Ming didn't give Fatty Ding much time to react because he needed to leave this area and return to his hometown as quickly as possible. The staff member, slightly annoyed by Jiang Ming's words, thought about Jiang Ming's family background and that small resentment could only remain unfulfilled. Jiang Ming breathed a sigh of relief upon realizing that Gardevoir didn't take the matter too seriously and he had no intention of wasting time here. Knowing clearly that he couldn't stay here any longer or he would likely continue to be pursued, Jiang Ming picked up Fatty Ding, who was trying to pull him into singing, and spoke seriously. Jiang Ming, who would never be so arrogant and would never miss such a great opportunity, decided to seize every second. He then handed Jigglypuff over to the staff who were handling the sprite incidents in the secret realm. Unfortunately, this is not a normal situation. The current situation is somewhat tense. To avoid any problems during this crucial time, Jiang Ming couldn't afford to waste a single moment. Jiang Ming, who had no interest in waiting for him to share the gossip, smiled as he looked at him. Although he knew that Jiang Ming was eager to know about the situation inside the Dongting Lake's secret realm, he still spoke without hesitation. As staff members, they had no way to enter the secret realm, so naturally they didn't know what was happening inside. It's human nature to love gossip, and the staff actually enjoy it too. Gardevoir, who was originally there to cover for Jiang Ming, calmly withdrew its attack and then calmly returned to Jiang Ming's side. However, the Dongting Lake secret realm is usually very peaceful and has never been in such a chaotic state as Jiang Ming's, which makes them realize that Jiang Ming must have done something extraordinary in the secret realm. If an ordinary trainer said something like that, the staff might just put on airs in front of the trainer. Normally, Jiang Ming would definitely give Pang Ding this face, since Pang Ding is indeed quite cute. After a while, these trainers who are in pretty good physical condition will definitely wake up from their coma. As soon as he ran over, Fatty grabbed Jiang Ming enthusiastically, trying to get him to sing with him. He had already booked the plane ticket when I called him just now. Because it's not a holiday, there are plenty of tickets available. Jiang Hongmin, who had no idea what Jiang Ming's situation was, thought that Jiang Ming had found something good in the secret realm and answered the phone with a lot of doubt. Upon learning that Jiang Ming was currently being hunted by many covetous trainers, Jiang Hongmin frowned slightly. Without requiring much explanation from Jiang Ming, he spoke without hesitation. As soon as he left Jiang Ming, he immediately called Jiang Hongmin. "I'm planning to fly home, could you send your ferry to pick me up?" Having already decided to leave as soon as possible, Jiang Ming spent more than 10 minutes resolving the issue with Jigglypuff before quickly leaving with Gardevoir, Sankasin, and the other Pokémon. This is a request that is rarely made, since Jiang Ming can usually handle his own problems. Jiang Hongmin has been very busy lately. Jiang Ming breathed a sigh of relief as he got into a car, very satisfied with Jiang Hongmin's quick understanding of his thoughts. Even if Jiang Hongmin offered to help Jiang Ming would feel it was unnecessary. Faced with this sudden request, Jiang Hongmin, who was busy at work, quickly put down his tasks and looked seriously at the phone. What happened? About an hour later, the plane landed, and Jiang Ming and Gardevoir saw Jengar causing trouble throughout the airport, making some ordinary people tremble with fear. Fortunately, they didn't have any utensils at home, so there was no need to worry about them not understanding even after I said a lot. I still have uses for the other Pokémon, but Jengar is fine for now. I'll have Jengar wait for you at the airport. Jiang Ming didn't intend to waste any time. Seeing that Jiang Hongmin had almost finished arranging things, he quickly hung up the phone and took Gardevoir directly to the nearest airport. 5.7. If he spends any more time arguing with this staff member, he might be found by the trainers. Unaware that the staff member was feeling resentful, Jiang Ming didn't waste too much time there. Although he was relieved, Jiang Ming did not waste any time. After hearing that Jiang Hongmin had realized that he was in trouble, Jiang Ming did not hesitate to tell him about what happened in the Dongting Lake's secret realm, including the matter of Hupa's power. As soon as the call connected, Jiang Ming hurriedly took Gardevoir and started looking for a car to leave while excitedly speaking to Jiang Hongmin. Unexpectedly, Jiang Ming, who was in a relatively safe environment, called him at this moment. Not long after Jiang Ming arrived at the airport, he and Gardevoir successfully boarded the plane home. After all, Gardevoir had already been taken there, and Jiang Ming wasn't going to any dangerous place, just a high-level secret realm. After all, there were still a lot of trainers lying on the ground outside because of his Pokémon's attack. Jiang Hongmin was an extremely intelligent trainer. He quickly cooperated with Jiang Ming based on his words and arranged for Jengar to go to the airport Jiang Ming mentioned over the phone. Jiang Ming was waiting for just this one sentence. After confirming that Jiang Hongmin had made arrangements for him, he quickly explained to Jiang Hongmin when he would arrive at the airport and what his plans were. Knowing that Jiang Ming had taken Gardevoir to the Dongting Lake secret realm, a high-level secret realm, Jiang Hongmin, who was busy at work, was very reassured about Jiang Ming's safety. All of these factors made Jiang Hongmin feel that Jiang Ming's current environment was very safe. Unexpectedly, Jenger was in such a leisurely mood. Jiang Ming brought Gardevoir and quickly arrived at Jenger's side. Although it can be a bit playful at times, Jenger is generally quite reliable. Upon seeing Jiang Ming arrive, Jenger was no longer frightened. Instead, it swaggered out and began to move forward. Normally, Jiang Ming would definitely have chatted with Jenger at this time, even though Pokémon and humans don't speak the same language and the conversation probably wouldn't have gone very well. Jiang Ming also wanted to learn something from Jenger, but that was under normal circumstances. Things are different now. Having finally escaped the pursuit of those trainers, Jiang Ming still has a lot to do. As Qiu Gui led him away from the airport, he looked around seriously. Just as Jenger was about to arrange for him to go home, Jiang Ming pointed directly in the direction of the hospital and took out a Piquet ball. Most of his Pokémon were unharmed. In this chase, thanks to Jiang Ming's proper arrangements, every Pokémon contributed, but they did not suffer any damage. At most, I just used up a little more energy, so I'm a bit tired. This fatigue doesn't require treatment. These elves only need to rest for a while to completely resolve the problem. Only one Pokémon was an exception, Nidoking. Nidoking was already injured because he had fought Gardevoir. After being injured and captured by Jiang Ming, Nidoking should have been sent to the hospital as soon as possible. However, because Jiang Ming's location did not support going to the hospital, Nidoking could only rest in its Piquet ball. If Jiang Ming doesn't need Nidoking's help in the future, then Nidoking won't be a big problem even in its current state. Unfortunately, neither Jiang Ming nor Nidoking were people who could stay calm. Before Jiang Ming could even think of having Nidoking take action, Nidoking had already started attacking the other trainers on its own. Later, due to some reasons, Jiang Ming had no choice but to ask Nidoking to help him stop it. The repeated arrangements further aggravated Nidoking's already injured condition. Jiang Ming couldn't possibly let a Pokémon that he had painstakingly collected just cause problems. Now that they had finally escaped the trainer's pursuit, Jiang Ming and his companion quickly ran towards the hospital. Jenger, who had initially thought Jiang Ming was planning to go straight home, was clearly surprised that Jiang Ming intended to go to the hospital. Hesitantly, it floated to Jiang Ming's side and tilted its head to look at him. It's clear they're worried about whether Jiang Ming has been injured. Jiang Ming, worried about the Pokémon, entered the hospital while holding a Piquet ball and immediately released Nidoking. As soon as he was released, Nidoking was taken to the emergency room by the doctor. Jiang Ming breathed a sigh of relief upon finally confirming that Nidoking could receive treatment without worry. He casually found a place to sit down and then smiled at Jenger, shaking his head. "I'm fine. Song is my Pokémon and his injury seems to be a bit serious." Jenger, looking at Jiang Ming with a puzzled expression, then drifted unsteadily toward the emergency room. Jiang Ming had no idea what Jenger was planning to do, but he could clearly see that Jenger intended to enter the emergency room, so he immediately grabbed Jenger. The Jenger, now held back, tilted its head again to look at Jiang Ming, its entire Pokémon filled with question marks. Jiang Ming, who really wanted to be as full of question marks as Jenger, twitched the corners of his mouth and spoke somewhat speechlessly under Jenger's puzzled gaze. "The doctor is already treating you. If you go in now, you might disturb him." Jenger, which is inherently a bit playful, struggled a little impatiently in response to Jiang Ming's words. However, she was still reliable. Although she was a little impatient, she hesitated for a moment but ultimately didn't go into the emergency room. Instead, she quietly stayed by Jiang Ming's side. With Jenger and Gardevoir by his side, Jiang Ming rested briefly at the hospital. About 2 or 3 hours later, Nidoking was finally brought out. Nidoking's injuries were indeed quite serious this time. He was unconscious after being wheeled out. The doctor, who already knew Nidoking's condition, looked around seriously. After confirming that Jiang Ming was the only trainer left, the doctor began to speak to Jiang Ming in a serious tone. Your spirit cannot be discharged from the hospital in the short term. Most Pokémon are taken to the hospital after being injured, but they don't need to stay there for long thanks to the advanced level of enhancement they have now. Many injuries can be healed thanks to these medical advancements. However, no matter how advanced medical technology is, it still has its limits. Those elves with more serious injuries need to stay in the hospital. Nidoking is clearly in a state of serious injury. Normally, after learning about Nidoking's condition, Jiang Ming would definitely have stayed in the hospital with his Pokémon obediently since it wasn't anything serious. Unfortunately, this wasn't the time to rush back to his city of residence as usual. He was safe for the time being, but there were just too many trainers in the Dongting Lake secret realm. Those trainers definitely have abilities. Knowing that he rushed back here, the trainers will definitely try to find him. Jiang Ming is not a particularly low-key person, and coupled with the fact that he had previously set up a foundation, these consecutive situations make it easy for him to expose his identity. Those trainers will definitely find him in a day or two and come here to take action against him. In this situation, if Jiang Ming doesn't go home, his safety is really not guaranteed. Not wanting to jeopardize his own safety, Jiang Ming hesitated, looking at the doctor. Can't we take this elf home to recuperate? Letter 3005. Most Pokémon are taken home by their trainers to recover after being injured, so the doctor was clearly not surprised by this statement. He glanced hesitantly at Nidoking, who was still fast asleep not far away. Although he wasn't surprised, he quickly rejected Jiang Ming's suggestion. That's a Pokémon in its normal state. Your Pokémon is severely injured. If you insist on taking it home to recover, it could very likely cause serious long-term effects. If you don't mind, then it's no problem. Of course, if Jiang Ming really doesn't mind and insists on taking Nidoking away, then Jiang Ming is indeed fine, but Shen Chensheng will definitely have a problem. Even an elf is a life, and for doctors who treat illnesses and save lives, they would consider an elf as important as a human life. Trainers who don't care much about the lives of their Pokémon will definitely be remembered by them. Jiang Ming glanced at the doctor and knew exactly what he was up to. He was definitely not the kind of trainer who would just stand by and watch his Pokémon have problems. The combination of these two situations meant that although Jiang Ming was eager to escape, he ultimately failed to do so. Unable to escape, he agreed to the doctor's request to take Nidoking back to his ward to rest. However, this does not mean that Jiang Ming will simply give up. After obediently leading Nidoking back to the ward, Jiang Ming realized he couldn't escape and stopped wasting time. He directly applied to Jiang Hongmin for the protection of Jengar. Jiang Hongmin, who was originally assigned to protect Jiang Ming, naturally would not refuse Jiang Ming's application. So a few minutes later, Jengar, who was originally planning to go home, was detained by Jiang Ming and became his temporary guard. Fortunately, Jengar is not a Pokémon that likes to stick to its trainer. Upon learning that Jiang Ming needed protection, the already lively Jengar floated directly to Nidoking's side, looked around, and then firmly stretched out a hand to pat itself. This was meant to reassure Jiang Ming. They'd be better off spending that time on something more important, like those trainers trying to use that power to find their friends. Anyway, his spirit was also very tired due to the Dongting Lake secret realm and now urgently needed a space to rest. As it turns out, the two elves did nothing wrong. However, Jiang Ming and his group did not sympathize with these people. Jiang Ming, who was waiting in the hospital, didn't have to wait long. Seeing Shen Fei rushing over with a group of elves, Jiang Ming took out what he was holding and handed it to Shen Fei. With nothing else to do, Jiang Ming yawned and decided to rest in the ward with his pet. The knowledgeable Shen Fei took the box and began to inspect it. Out of a sense of sympathy, Jiang Ming did not intend to turn them away when they came looking for him. Jiang Ming's Siki, who had been patted on the head, glanced at Shen Fei, who was trying to be kind with a headache. He didn't intend to say any more useless things to Shen Fei. Shen Fei is currently conducting research, and under normal circumstances, she wouldn't leave casually. After finishing her sentence, Shen Fei quickly told Jiang Ming where she would be going and where she would be conducting research. Then, without further ado, she said goodbye to Jiang Ming and hurriedly left with the other elves. After checking it a few minutes later, Shen Fei quickly closed the box and nodded seriously to Jiang Ming. This thing is indeed useful to me. Gardevoir has been following you around lately, protecting you along with Jengar. After I figure this thing out, I will bring other Pokémon to help you deal with those trainers. Upon learning that Jiang Ming was currently in the hospital, Shen Fei didn't waste any words. After hanging up the phone, she hurriedly took Elf to the hospital. In this situation, it's actually a good thing that he's taking the elves to rest. If others were to try and seize this power, Jiang Ming probably wouldn't take them seriously. Having determined that Jiang Ming wouldn't be leaving anytime soon, Jengar quickly and reliably searched the ward and the hospital. Having confirmed that Jengar was willing to help him, Jiang Ming quickly began to make new plans and decided to contact more people to explain his situation. Just as Jiang Ming thought, Shen really didn't need this kind of power for scientific research. But after hearing the power in Jiang Ming's hand, the normal situation was disrupted. Since they went to such lengths to seize this power for their friend, they are unlikely to let it go so easily afterward. Shen Fei wasn't a heartless person to begin with, and hearing Jiang Ming's words, she nodded to him with comfort. "You are very kind, which is a wonderful quality." While Jiang Ming was resting with his Pokémon, Jengar clearly didn't need to rest. Incidentally, Jiang Ming also told Shen Fei about the power he possessed. After Shen Fei left, Nidoking's ward fell silent once again. Jiang Ming, who rarely interacts with Jengar, couldn't easily put his mind at ease, but he naturally wouldn't show it on his face. Thanks to the two Pokémon's diligent efforts, a trainer who had located Jiang Ming and was secretly planning to ambush him at the hospital was caught by the very reliable Jengar, who was also searching for him before he could even reach Jiang Ming. For the next few days, the two elves helped Jiang Ming search for suspicious individuals almost every day. Under Jengar's leadership, Gardevoir also joined the mission to protect Jiang Ming. He hesitated for a moment, then looked at Shen Fei's slightly furrowed brow as she learned that a group of people were searching for this power to try and bring their friend back. He spoke to Shen Fei with a hint of helplessness. "I think if you've finished your research and have some left over, maybe you can give it to them." Perhaps worried that he had spoken too seriously, Shen raised his hand and patted Jiang Ming's head after saying this. If it's a trainer who tries to steal power but doesn't intend to use it for anything important, then Jiang Ming will not hesitate to have Jengar take action against them. To avoid this trouble, Jiang Ming immediately walked towards the trainer, intending to injure him to demonstrate his strength. However, this trainer's intended use of this power was rather legitimate. At least Jiang Ming didn't have much of a feeling about its purpose. Although he has the ability to resolve some issues, it's always better to avoid trouble if possible. Then the glass window shattered and a Pidgey suddenly swooped towards Jiang Ming. Jiang Ming, who had initially thought the trainer was behind this, suddenly became serious upon seeing this. Just then, footsteps sounded outside the door. "Please give me flowers." Pidgeotto's goal seemed very clear. Seeing that Jiang Ming's side had retreated, Pidgeotto did not intend to attack Jiang Ming at this time. Instead, it changed its target and went directly to the trainer in front of Jiang Ming. Then a man pushed open the door that wasn't fully closed. The sudden appearance of the Pidgey caught Jiang Ming off guard, and Jiang Ming, who had originally planned to take action against the trainer, quickly began to retreat. If he lets the other party go this time, then more people will come here to cause him trouble. Unfortunately, Jengar's combat strength was clearly not something he could easily ignore. After all, Jengar was Jiang Hongman's Pokémon. It's quite a coincidence that the trainer captured by Jengar was the same one who had previously told Jiang Ming that his friend was conducting research in the secret realm. The trainer, who had been unaware of what had happened, suddenly realized what was going on and asked the man blocking his way, somewhat agitated, "Weren't you saying I was supposed to handle this myself?" Under this pressure, the trainer didn't even get 2 miles from the hospital before being caught by Jengar again and obediently dragged back to Jiang Ming's ward. He was clearly not a rigid trainer. Upon realizing the difficulty, he immediately wanted to run away. However, just as Jiang Ming walked up to the trainer, a series of crackling sounds suddenly came from outside the window. Jiang Ming felt a little helpless when he saw that the trainer who had been dragged back by Jengar was an acquaintance. The trainer who was captured by Jengar was clearly surprised that a Pidgey would break in and was obviously quite astonished that the Pidgey had set its sights on him. Jiang Ming, who had already received the news in advance, waited in the ward. His already considerable strength, coupled with the powerful Pokémon, made him realize that it would be quite difficult for him to defeat Jiang Ming in the short term. In this situation, he really didn't know how to deal with the trainer. Although there was little he could do, Jiang Ming wasn't about to let the other party off the hook since his safety was the most important thing. But this unhurried demeanor alone is enough to make the trainer feel a powerful sense of pressure. After being captured by Jengar, the trainer was well aware that Jiang Ming's combat strength was considerable, especially since Jiang Ming had never had such a powerful Jengar by his side before. The Jengar, which had already been trained quite well by Jiang Hongmen, appeared beside him when the trainer tried to run away. The man who pushed the door open glanced coldly at Jiang Ming, then quickly ran to Pidgeotto's side, firmly blocking the trainer who had been brought back by Jengar. The man blocking his way stared intently at Jiang Ming's somewhat displeased reply. With your mediocre skills, it's extremely difficult for you to snatch anything from him. Jiang Ming listened silently to the conversation between the two, then twitched the corner of his mouth, unsure how to comment on the matter. The other party seems to have a high opinion of him, which is a good thing. But it seems that he is the other party's target. Just as Jiang Ming was thinking speechlessly, the 12-0 trainer who had Jiang Ming as his target also quickly threw out another Poké ball. With a loud bang, a small fist-sized stone appeared in front of Jiang Ming. The little fist stone rushed directly towards Jiang Ming. Jengar, which was originally here to protect Jiang Ming, would naturally not allow Geodude to actually attack Jiang Ming. Seeing Geodude attacking Jiang Ming, Jengar immediately blocked Geodude's attack and used its skill to guide Geodude in another direction. This little fist stone is quite easy to guide. Normally, the success rate of guiding Jeng's behavior isn't particularly high. Unfortunately, Geodude doesn't seem to have much of a brain, so even though the chance of it having a low impact was not high, it still managed to lure Geodude to another location immediately. The trainer who threw out Geodude in an attempt to get it to attack Jiang Ming opened his mouth, seemingly very unhappy that his Pokémon had been so easily distracted by Jengar, but he didn't know how to comment. After all, this was his spirit, and it would be an insult to him to give it a bad evaluation, but he couldn't bring himself to say it if he gave it a good evaluation. Jiang Ming, who had initially expected a fierce battle, looked at the trainer who seemed to want to say something but hesitated and couldn't help but feel a little amused and exasperated. After his initial amusement and exasperation, he began to seriously consider having a conversation with the trainer. Just then, a crackling sound came from the side. Jiang Ming, who was originally planning to have a conversation, was drawn to the sound and looked curiously in the direction from which it came. Upon closer inspection, it became clear that Geodude was attempting to attack Jengar. However, Jengar's ghost type alone is enough to prove that this Pokémon cannot be encountered so easily. Therefore, Geodude's attacks are not always accurate. Almost every time it lands not far from Jengar but never actually touches it. Once or twice is fine, but after it happened a lot, Little Stone, who doesn't have much of a brain and isn't very calm, was obviously annoyed by this incident. Feeling extremely displeased, Little Stone clenched his rocky fist and angrily began smashing things around the hospital room. Although seeing the other trainer's Pokémon suffer such a terrible fate made Jiang Ming want to laugh. But thinking about the compensation Jiang Ming would need to pay after cleaning up the ward, Jiang Ming, who wanted to laugh but didn't want to, silently turned his gaze to the Geodude trainer. Why don't you recall this sprite first? Given the current situation, it's impossible for Geodude to hit Jengar. If they can't hit anything and just randomly smash things around in the vicinity, it's better if they don't appear at all. The Geodude trainer clearly understood what Jiang Ming meant by those words and was even more aware of Jiang Ming's current attitude. Seeing Jiang Ming looking at Geodude with a strange expression, seemingly looking down on Geodude, the trainer probably lost his temper. He turned his head defiantly at Jiang Ming 5.0 and said, "Impossible. My Pokémon may not be able to attack your Pokémon, but it definitely has the ability to interfere with you. Jiang Ming fell silent for a moment after being told what was so righteous, and ultimately decided not to pay any attention to it. Anyway, Jenger wouldn't have any problems because of this. As for the issue of compensation for the damaged items in the ward, he could just force the two people to pay for it later. Trainers who can enter advanced dungeons shouldn't be short of money. Having thought things through, Jiang Ming quickly regained his composure, coldly looking at the group of trainers before him, and then launched an attack without hesitation. Both trainers are actually quite capable. If Jiang Ming were to fight these two trainers with his own Pokémon, it would be hard to say who would win. After all, Nidoking, which Jiang Ming subdued from the secret realm, is still injured and lying in bed, making it impossible for him to get up and fight. The shiny Magikarp caught from the secret realm is also a late-game powerhouse. If Jiang Ming had the power to evolve this Pokémon into a shiny Gyarados, it would indeed raise his team's combat strength to a new level. But given Magikarp's current state, even if you're shiny, it obviously won't be of much use. After eliminating those two Pokémon, Jiang Ming can only use the same old method as before. Although those elves were quite powerful, their strength had not yet reached the top level. Fortunately, because of the presence of Jenger and Gardevoir, although the Pokémon Jiang Ming had were not yet at the top level, they were still able to overpower the two trainers in front of him. The two trainers, who had originally planned to have a good fight with Jiang Ming, were quickly defeated and demoralized by Jenger and Gardevoir. Jiang Ming, who had already guessed this would be the result, smiled smugly and planned to communicate with these trainers after they had been withdrawn for a while. He wasn't exactly a top-tier trainer. The reason they're attacking these trainers now is just to show their stance. After that, they'll still be willing to have a proper talk with these trainers about that power. However, just as Jiang Ming was about to communicate with the two trainers, a voice suddenly came from the hospital bed not far away. Nidoran, who was unconscious, suddenly opened his eyes and let out an angry roar. Completely unaware of the situation on Nidoking's side, Jiang Ming turned his head and saw Geodude, who had been throwing a tantrum in the room, now standing next to Nidoking. This sprite was in a very bad mood, so it attacked everything indiscriminately. While Jiang Ming's Pokémon might not be top tier in combat strength, they certainly possessed good evasion abilities, allowing them to dodge Geodude's attacks. But Nidoking, lying in his hospital bed, couldn't escape it. After all, if it hadn't been injured, it wouldn't be lying in a hospital bed. Because of this injury, Nidoking, lying in his hospital bed, thought Geodude would dodge him, but he didn't expect Geodude to actually attack him indiscriminately. Nidoking, already annoyed by his injury, instantly became enraged by the attack and got up to try to attack Geodude. Under normal circumstances, Do Wang's current actions would definitely succeed since little Geodude only looks strong but his fighting ability is really average. Unfortunately, Nidoking is not in its usual state. This Pokémon is currently injured. Unable to even get up, Nidoran, after raging for 817 times, sadly lay back down on his sickbed. Unexpectedly, it was Nidoking who ended up getting hurt. Jiang Ming twitched the corner of his mouth and suddenly felt very sorry for the poor elf. Then, with great sympathy, Jiang Ming turned his head and looked seriously at the two trainers in front of him. "Take your elves back, or I'm not going to have a proper talk with you." If Jiang Ming had said these things under normal circumstances, those trainers wouldn't have taken him seriously at all, since they weren't there to have a proper chat with him. It's worth noting that Jiang Ming had promised them he wouldn't take this power, but in the end he still managed to take it, which proves that Jiang Ming isn't so easy to deal with. Jiang Ming remained silent. Furthermore, the fact that Shen Fei did not object when he told her he wanted to spare some of his strength is enough to prove that Shen Fei probably has her own methods as well. Cheng Tian didn't seem interested in having any unnecessary conversation with Jiang Ming. After introducing himself, he quickly began to condemn Jiang Ming's behavior. "My name is Cheng Tian. They only need these things to find their friends again, and that's why the quantity isn't particularly important to them." Upon hearing Jiang Ming's words, Cheng Tian's eyes widened. After all, Jiang Ming's words about being willing to hand over the items to them, but his actions of directly handing them over to his mother, made it seem like his words and deeds didn't match up. Jiang Lu, feeling reprimanded, touched his nose, unsure of what to say at this moment, since the group he was facing had indeed suffered some losses. Those things are very useful for my mother's research, so it's impossible for me to get them back easily. But I can talk to them and ask them to give you a small portion of them. While it's unclear whether this kind of thing can actually be distinguished, if it could, would either one be of any use? The two trainers looked grim. The trainer who had initially attacked Jiang Ming stepped forward to look at Jiang Ming and then spoke up. Now that we've condemned it enough, let's talk about that power. I'm willing to give you those things, but before you came, I gave them to my mother to study. Since Jiang Ming is willing to give them these usable items, they really don't need to attack Jiang Ming at this time. Completely unaware that a puddle of water had suddenly appeared under his feet, Cheng Tian had just finished nodding and was about to walk towards Jiang Ming when he slipped and fell because of the puddle. Jiang Ming knew what they were thinking, so he didn't intend to keep them in suspense at this time and spoke without hesitation. Cheng Tian might think he was just unlucky, but Jiang Luo remembered that Jenger had the ability to curse other people, causing those ordinary people to suffer because of the curse. Having realized that he couldn't possibly defeat Jiang Ming and there was no need to launch an attack, Cheng Tian pondered for a moment and then quickly nodded to Jiang Ming. Whether it was bad luck or something else, just as he nodded, a puddle of water suddenly appeared at his feet. Having confirmed that these two trainers weren't so difficult to communicate with, Jiang Ming let out a sigh of relief. Then, just as the two trainers looked a little frustrated, he spoke directly to them without hesitation. As long as it works, that's fine. Under these circumstances, Jiang Ming is willing to make this promise by taking out a loan in advance. After being condemned for a while and once Cheng Tian had finished his condemnation, Jiang Ming, believing he had cleared his name, quickly looked seriously at Cheng Tian and began to speak to him without hesitation. It was precisely because they felt Jiang Ming was difficult to communicate with that they attempted to harm him just now. As Cheng Tian made this move, Jenger, who had been floating around nearby, silently returned to Jiang Ming's side as if feeling guilty. When Cheng Tian and the other trainer who had been promised a share by Jiang Ming heard that Jiang Ming was willing to share some with them, their initial anger immediately subsided. The two trainers, who already knew they were probably no match for Jiang Ming, were frustrated but ultimately had no choice but to put their Geodude away. Cheng Tian is clearly cursed now. Having some knowledge of Jenger and its abilities, Jiang Ming's eyelids twitched at the sight. We can have a good talk about that force. I never thought I would be the one to get those things in the end. However, their attempt failed, and they even got a beating from Jiang Ming. 2 or 3 days later, after no new trainers appeared, Jiang Ming, along with Cheng Wei and the trainer who had come with Cheng Wei, went to find Shen Fei. After all, Jiang Ming took a lot this time. Besides the shiny Magikarp, that power was definitely a huge temptation for many trainers. Just when Cheng Tian thought Jenger was about to attack him, Jenger seriously bumped into Cheng Tian. Seeing Cheng Tian stand up and fall down repeatedly because of the curse, Jiang Ming twitched his lips and silently nudged the Jenger next to him. Were there other people planning to attack me when you came here? With this cooperation between the two sides, Jenger, the expert at catching people, caught more than a dozen trainers for Jiang Ming in the following days, and then Jiang Ming chased away more than a dozen trainers. Having already guessed that Cheng Tian would have this attitude, Jiang Ming calmly looked at the person in front of him. But now they've already finalized the deal. Just as Cheng Tian was getting a little annoyed by his attitude, Jiang Ming finally spoke up, somewhat helplessly. If they can't outcompete Jiang Ming, then they'll have to come and snatch them. After I've dealt with those people, I'll take you to find my mother, but for now, I need to deal with them first. Jenger immediately turned around and left the ward. You're not just saying that, are you? He had no intention of letting Cheng Tian know about Jenger's methods and casually waved to Jiang Ming. If Jiang Ming had mentioned something else, Cheng Tian might have been a little unhappy, but since Jiang Ming was talking about this matter, no matter how unhappy Cheng Tian was, he wouldn't object. It would be better to take this opportunity to wipe out those people with Jiang Ming before going to get the stuff. At least that way it would be safe. Just as Cheng Tian was hesitating and thinking, Jiang Ming calmly glanced at Cheng Tian in front of him and after confirming that he had indeed met other trainers, said with a hint of helplessness. Because of this, countless trainers will surely choose to seek out Jiang Ming. Cheng Tian had no idea what Jenger's current state meant. Seeing Jenger quickly turn and leave, he looked at Jiang Ming with a blank expression. After all, this problem is indeed Jiang Ming's current crisis. Although I can make such a promise to you now, I probably won't be able to give you that power in the short term. One sentence was enough to stop Cheng Tian, who was still doubting Jiang Ming, from speaking. Although Cheng Tian knew this was perfectly normal, he didn't dare say anything. After all, if Jiang Ming got upset and really refused to hand over the items, then he would be at a huge loss. If the two people who were fighting fiercely just now were cursed, then Jiang Ming definitely wouldn't take it seriously. For Jiang Ming, cursing was also a means. For the sake of safety, they looked at each other for a moment and finally obediently agreed with Jiang Ming's statement. If they were to follow Jiang Ming to obtain a portion of that power, it would mean that others would likely discover it as well. So, isn't it perfectly normal for other trainers to try and cause trouble for Jiang Ming while he's in the hospital? Jenger, having been pushed, wobbled and drifted towards Cheng Tian's direction. Cheng Tian, who was wondering what was going on with Jenger, was taken aback by these words. For a while afterward, Jenger lingered near the hospital while Jiang Ming stayed inside, acting as a dutiful bait.
Hello, everyone! As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500-plus novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.